How are you feeling? How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
And what brought you?
That's difficult to answer.
Eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital.
That's difficult to answer.
is the end? There's a noise inside my head of crying people facing death. Is this the end? Is this the end? I'm burning in dystopian. There's no place to hide. I'm burning in What have we done to the world? What have we done to the world? I'm burning in dystopian. There's no place to hide. I'm burning in dystopian. This is the final scene of Sweet dreams are made of these. Who am I to disagree? Travel the world and the seven seas. Everybody's looking for something. Some of them want to use you. Some of them want to get used by you. Some of them want to use you. Some of them want to be out you.
Can we grow up a little bit and
Alt
not
Girl
be
sent $200.
retarded?
Have you
Please.
seen the work of Karlyn Borysenko? Anti-commie cult leader and is obsessed with looking at what actual far-left communists are talking about and organizing today, infiltrating them. They infiltrated the universities, schools, media. She has the receipts to back it up. Primary source evidence. Infestation is dire and she calls Republicans idiots eating slop. Agree.
Thank you for the big super chat. Yeah, oh, I know Karlyn B. She's solid. She's funny. I
The
like
Great
her.
Noticer sent $200.
I don't. She's anti-Christian, though. I'm not a fan of that.
The Great
Okay. Who sent in the super chat? Who did it? Which one of you guys did it? I got to tell you, when I got a DM last night, I got a DM last night from just someone that I didn't even really like. That's maybe DM me a couple times, but like I don't really know who they are. And they were like, Karlyn, someone super chatted to Nick about you, and I was like, great. I was like, oh no, what was said? What did young Nicholas say in return? And so I honestly had a little bit of a heart attack because I know that the Groypers are not necessarily pleased with me right now because I took Adam Green's side and I've been doing the Christian question spaces, and the Groypers were never really that big of a fan of me not being a Christian, you know, in the first place. And I was always very honest. Listen, man, I have been cool with Nick's for like 2 years or something. Like, I've been cool with Nick Fuentes for a while. Like, Nick Fuentes and I, you know, I mean, we had to get over a little hurdle where we didn't like each other for a while, but like, you know, we came together after October 7th and I realized how much they had lied about him, and I realized what a good analyst he was. And so, I mean, Nick and I have always been cool, but like, at least since, since that time period. But like, but the Groypers, I have a touch and go relationship with the Groypers where they just cause a lot of problems and they create a lot of nonsense where there's no nonsense that needs to exist. Not all Groypers, just like not all Jews, not all Groypers do this. There are Groypers that like me, and I know that. But anyway, so last night when someone DM'd me and said, "Karlyn, someone super chatted to Nick about you," I was like, oh shit. I thought it was going to be so much worse than it was. I thought it was going to be so much worse than it was. And it actually turned out to be really lovely. So I don't know exactly who super chatted, but I do want to thank you for sending the super chat. And of course, I'm cool with Nick. Listen, I know full well that Nick does not like that I'm not a Christian. I know full well that Nick does not like Adam Green. I know all this. But here's the thing. I refuse to choose between Nick Fuentes and Adam Green. I refuse. I absolutely refuse. I love and adore Adam Green. I just like him as a person. I think he's just got a really good vibe. I think he's got a chill energy. I think Adam Green's work and his research is second to none. I'm very impressed with his level of knowledge. I love listening to Adam Green talk about what he knows because he's so wonky about it. Adam Green is as obsessed with the stuff that he covers as I am obsessed with the stuff that I cover. And I have a lot of respect for that. And I happen to agree with a lot of his ideas. I am fully well aware that Adam Green and Nick Fuentes do not get along. Okay. I'm fully aware of it, but I also love and appreciate Nick and I adore Nick. And I think Nick is so smart. And I'm so just honestly thrilled at his ascension. And I'm thrilled that Nick is getting, it's got to feel great for Nick right now because Nick got shit on for a really long time. One of the reasons that, and this is off the topic of today, but we're letting people file in while I talk. But one of the reasons that I kind of got on Nick's side after October 7th is I realized just how much he had been lied about by the conservative establishment. And so, and you know what? That kid, I've been through a lot of stuff at the hands of conservatives. I have been smeared. I have been defamed. I've had my name dragged through the mud. I've been doxxed. I've had my friends and family doxxed, all at the hands of conservatives, by the way. Conservatives have harassed me far more than the left ever has. And so I understand just a teeny tiny little piece of what Nick Fuentes has had to go through. And Nick Fuentes has been targeted on a much bigger scale than I ever was. Like everything he's experienced is on a much bigger level. And so, I have nothing but respect for the kid, even if we disagree on some things, even if he's a Christian and I'm not, and that's fine. He's allowed to be a Christian as long as, he's not forcing me to be one yet. And so I am actually genuinely thrilled at the amount of attention and accolades. And just Nick is getting his moment and it must feel so good for him because he had to put up with so much shit for so long. And so nothing but love for Nick Fuentes. I'm not a Christian. I'm not going to be a Christian. I agree with Adam Green, but I refuse to choose between Adam Green and Nick Fuentes. And the Groypers are just going to have to settle down about that. And that's going to be the way it is. So if you don't know Adam Green has a show. It's called No More News. You can find him on Rumble and Odyssey. Obviously you can find Nick on Rumble, and I'm never going to tell anyone which side to be on or who to support. I think that people should listen to them both. I think they're both really smart. I would love to see Adam have a discussion with Nick, but I don't think that's ever going to happen because reasons. There's history between the two. But I'm not going to choose. I refuse. I am fucking Switzerland in this debate. And you know what? Shout out to Nick for knowing flat out that I'm not a Christian and basically saying, essentially that he still likes me. And that's cool. That's cool. So that's that. That happened last night. Again, thank you to the person who sent in that super chat. I was really not expecting it at all in any way, and that was kind of cool. So we've got a big topic to cover today. We've got a big topic to cover today. And I thought I was thinking about doing fat studies today. I was thinking about doing fat liberation, which is But I honestly don't want to scare people away. Like fat liberation and fat studies is, we've done a couple tough streams this week. On Monday, we did an introduction to queer Marxism. if you missed the Monday stream, I highly recommend you go back and watch it. I did put I think, did I put the clip on the YouTube channel? I will be uploading it to YouTube and to my Substack if people haven't seen it. But I did do basically a 2-hour introductory class to queer Marxism, the evolution of queer Marxism, all that stuff. That was a lot. Yesterday, we covered the bashback movement and violent queer militant activism, and that was a really big stream that went a lot later than I thought it was going to. I even had to cancel my 9 p.m. show because we had a lot to talk about in that stream. And so we've had a couple big streams in a row, and I was this close to doing fat studies today. I was this close. But I really think that if I did fat studies today, that might be too much. It might be enough to scare all the new people away, and I don't want to do that yet. So I decided to cover the feel-good topic of abolish the family. I decided to cover the second most dystopian topic that I talk about, which is abolish the family Marxism, because it's kind of like, well, I have all your attention. Can I just show you the craziest, most dystopian shit that I cover on the left? Can I just show you guys this? Now, what we're going to be covering today is going to be a review for people who have been on the channel before. We have watched all of the things already that we're going to watch today, but I selected the things that I did for today because I think that they are great introductory options for people who are new to abolish the family Marxism. Okay, so I have 3 things I want to go through today. We're not going to watch the totality of these 3 things, but I want to show you what we're going to be watching. And so abolish the family is a very real thing on the left. They do want to abolish the nuclear family. This is a subset of queer Marxism, so that's part of why it goes well with what we're already talking about. So this does fall under kind of like the header of queer Marxism. Let me just get my thing set up there. There we go. There we go. We're going to watch 3 things today. The first thing I'm going to show you is an infiltration that we did back in June. I think, when was the date? July 1st. We did this July 1st. So the first thing I want to show you guys, and this is again this is really targeted at people who are newer to my content that maybe weren't around when we did a lot of this stuff. Again, for people who have been here for a while, this might be a review for some of you, but if this is a review for you, please help other people in the chat learn by answering questions and that sort of thing. We're going to watch 3 things. The first thing is an infiltration we did in July. We went inside a meeting of the Seattle Revolutionary Socialists, and it happened to be a meet, and this was actually just like their normal weekly meeting. So this meeting was something that is supposed to be just for people that are in Seattle, but I don't know. Someone sent me the link. It was very clandestine, and so I went to the meeting and I recorded it. And we got the Seattle Revolutionary Socialists on video talking about what they think about abolish the family and stuff like that. And so I just want to play people this clip. That's going to be the first thing that we watch, so you guys can get a sense of how socialists actually do talk about this thing, like in reality, in the real world, because this is actually just their meeting. So you can hear how they talk in the real world when they think that that no one like us is listening. That's going to be thing number 1 that we listen to. Thing number 2 is we're keeping it within the Firebrand Collective. The Firebrand Collective is a loosely affiliated group of revolutionary communists and socialists all over the country. The Seattle Revolutionary Socialists are part of the Firebrand Collective. So are the Denver Communists. The Seattle Revolutionary Socialists and the Denver Communists were basically 2 of the key players in that Revolutionary Socialism conference that I went undercover at a couple weeks ago. I shouldn't say went undercover. I recorded them because it was all virtual, so I didn't actually have to go anywhere. But like, so they were the ones that did the Revolutionary Socialism Conference. And by the way, just because I haven't released all the clips from that conference yet, don't think I'm not going to Denver Communists and Seattle Revolutionary Socialists. Just I don't want the Denver Communists and the Seattle Revolutionary Socialists to think that I've forgotten about them and the Revolutionary Socialism Conference, because I've just been really busy and I haven't had a chance to release the clips from that yet. But don't think I've forgotten about you guys. I still have a whole bunch of clips to make, okay? But the Denver Communists a couple years ago did a really great introduction to the idea behind Abolish the Family, which is this presentation on social reproduction theory. This is one of the most plain language communist presentations that I have ever seen explaining the concept of why communists want to abolish the nuclear family. And they do it to the theme of The Shining, so it's kind of interesting. And so we're going to watch I think it's about half of this, because the beginning of this presentation is just so fire. If you need an introduction to Abolish the Family Communism, this is going to be one of the best introductions that you're going to get. And I'm going to walk you through it, and we're going to break down all the language, and I'm going to explain it and all that stuff. One quick note, just something funny that happened early today. So I got up today, and I had an email in one of my fake identity email accounts about basically a class that's going on, and I'm not going to say where it's going on, but I will say that this woman up here, TT Bhattacharya, she was in the class. I bring her up, and it's just purely coincidental that she happened to be in my YouTube recommendations. So I was literally watching a live class with this woman earlier today, and it was a college seminar about social reproduction theory, which is the basis of Abolish the Nuclear Family. And it was so funny. And I wish I had, I tried to record it. The sound in the recording didn't come out, so I don't have a recording of it. You guys are just going to have to trust me. But in this class, this woman said to them, when they started the Q&A session, she said, "Now listen, guys, when you're asking questions, you should only ask questions related to the content of the presentation and don't ask questions about anything else, because there are outsiders trying to infiltrate our meetings and record them. And we want to make sure we're not saying anything on video that can be used against us and getting us fired from our job." And I was like, oh, she knows I'm there. She knows. I was like, holy shit. I was like, oh. I was like, it's over. It's over. The communists have figured me out. They figured out that if they have a virtual meeting somewhere, I'm going to be recording them. Yes, I was recording you. Don't worry, the sound didn't come out. There was actually not really that much eventful going on in that meeting anyway. I just kind of, I couldn't get it live in time to be able to do a spy stream, so I just recorded it myself, and the sound didn't turn out, of course, because I messed up this. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. That what matters is that she was specifically warning people that there are people like me watching them and recording them, and I was like, oh, my reputation precedes me. Actually, it's funny, because another thing I'll show you guys is I got into a whole bunch of interactions today with a bunch of communists on Twitter. Guys, the communists on Twitter have figured out I'm recording them. And they were on Twitter today yelling at me. And the communists on Twitter, they were like, oh yeah, you're not infiltrating our meetings. You're not infiltrating our meetings. These are all public meetings. And I said, okay, communists, well, if they're public meetings, then you don't have any problem with me recording them then. And the communists were like, why are you recording our meetings? I was like, you're telling me they're public meetings and anyone can go, so why can't I record them? They're like, well, you're not doing anything. You're just recording public meetings. You're a grifter. I'm like, well, my whole job basically is I go to your meetings and I record you, and then people pay me money to do that. And they were like, why would they pay you money to record us? These are public meetings. And I was like, well, why do you care if I record you if they're public meetings? And this went on for like 2 hours on Twitter, where I had all these communists in my replies going, you're not infiltrating. This is all public. Neener, neener, neener. And I was like, well, if it's really all public, then why the fuck do you care if I record you? And so this one was just the best. This guy says, ma'am, your entire bit is centered around infiltrating leftist spaces and exposing secrets when you're literally entering public spaces and obtaining public information. You are a grifter. Why even tweet back? And I said, yes, communists, you have exposed me. You figured it out. My entire platform is dedicated to recording your meetings and showing them to other people. Congratulations, guys. The communists figured me out. It's all over. The communists finally figured it out. It only took them 3 years to figure out that I'm going inside their meetings and recording it. And then they say, these are just public meetings, so you're not really doing anything. And then I say, then why the fuck do you care if I'm recording them in the first place? Yeah. Why are they so upset? Why are they so upset? Why are they so upset that I'm sharing their ideas in the first place? Yeah, real. Real, so fucking real. We need to make a t-shirt of that. McCarlinism. Yeah. I need to make a t-shirt of that. Not McCarthyism, McCarlinism. Okay, it's over. McCarthy is dead. We are alive. We're here. It's the way it goes. Anyway, so those are the first two. See, hang on. Seems like an argument Andrew Wilson was having last with it. Well, Andrew Wilson is a giant pussy. We like Andrew Wilson is a giant ass pussy that's afraid to debate me. Can we just remind everyone? I have offered Andrew Wilson. Here's what happened. Too long didn't read. Andrew Wilson publicly called me out on a stream and said she would be afraid to sit across from me. And I said, oh, no, I wouldn't, Andrew. Why don't you pick out a debate topic that's relevant to the far left? And Andrew Wilson was like, all your debate topics are stupid. And I was like, well, then you tell me what you want to debate about, because you're the one that challenged me publicly on a live stream. And then we went back and forth and back and forth. And then Andrew Wilson was drinking one day and he had a giant fuck off meltdown about me on Twitter where he said, you're not even important. I don't want to debate you anyway, you stupid whore, or something like that. And so Andrew Wilson is a massive pussy. And until Andrew Wilson puts on his big boy pants and actually debates me, he can go fuck himself. He was the one that got mad first, so he lost. I won. And he can go back to debating his OnlyFans whores on that stupid show that I refuse to watch. I'm just saying. So the last thing that we're going to watch today is a Sophie Lewis classic. I very strategically picked out this specific interview with our ginger dragon goddess. Now, if you don't know who Sophie Lewis is yet, you be prepared to fall in love. Be prepared. We love Sophie. We stan Sophie. Sophie is our favorite communist. Sophie is my internet girlfriend. It's not consensual on her part, but she doesn't have any choice because I can't quit Sophie. I can't. We call Sophie the ginger dragon. She is our Abolish the Family goddess. Sophie has written 2 books on Abolish the Family Marxism. And one of the reasons, Sophie has great boobs. She shows them off all the time on Instagram. And one of the reasons we love Sophie is that she does tend to actually explain things in pretty plain language, but she also has Sophieisms, and she says the craziest shit. We have Sophie on video talking about abolishing the family by growing babies in bio bags and doing surrogacy. We have Sophie on video like becoming this. Sophie is like this close to understanding the JQ. She is so fucking close to understanding the Jewish question. It's not even funny. And there's a nice little segment in this interview specifically that I'm not going to give away yet, but Sophie says something very, very, very spicy in this interview. And I want you guys to hear it. So this is a Sophie classic from 2 years ago. We've watched it on the channel before, but we're going to do it again today because, I mean, there is no better introduction to Abolish the Family Marxism than the ginger dragon goddess, my internet girlfriend, Sophie Lewis. Okay? So that's what we're going to do today. We are going to be watching a clip from the Seattle Revolutionary Socialists. We're going to be watching a clip from the Denver Communists. And then we are crowning it off with our queen bee, Sophie Lewis. And if you guys have any questions about Abolish the Family as we make our way through these presentations, you are welcome to ask, of course, and we'll be answering questions in the chat, and it's going to be awesome, awesome, awesome. Now, one more thing before we get started. Tonight at 9 p.m., I'm going to be doing a Twitter space with Sally. She is at Talk with Sally. And I got to give Sally credit because Sally has been paying attention, and Sally tweeted out to her 60-some-odd thousand followers, 63,000 followers, basically, that Trantifa isn't a real thing. And of course, Andy Knows followers are having all sorts of feelings about this. Did you guys see last night? I started getting comments from Andy Knows followers where Andy Knows followers have now decided that I am in Trantifa, which isn't even a real thing. But because I'm telling people Trantifa isn't a real thing, Andy Knows followers, because they're not very smart, are like, you must be in Trantifa, and I'm like, bro. Are you guys stupid or what? Anyway, shout out to Sally. I'm going to be doing a Twitter space with her at 9 p.m. tonight, so I want to encourage everyone to come join us, and it'll be awesome. And which one of your students defended you? Yes, Pete, you were one of the people to defend me, so I do appreciate that. Thank you so much. Appreciate the super chat. All right, we do have a lot to get into, though, guys. We're going to jump right into it. As always, if you want to support the work I'm doing, please head over to my Substack. That is Karlyn, KARLYN.substack.com, where you can sign up for a membership. $8 a month, $80 a year. I am, of course, 100% funded by people just like you. And my only job is to show up and to tell you the truth and to show you the receipts and stuff like that. So you can make sure to fund my work over there. You get access to spy streams. You get access to supporter exclusive perks. So, and you help me out. Because if you guys don't fund my work, then it doesn't get done. There is no one else on the internet doing what I'm doing right now. And so if you want to see it continue, please make sure you're funding over there. You can also, of course, send in super chats. You can become a YouTube channel member. There's other ways you can fund too, but my preferred method is, of course, Substack. So please head over there. $8 a month, $80 a year. You guys keep me in business, and I can't do it without you, and I really, really appreciate it. Let's jump in. The first thing we're going to do is I'm just going to play you this clip. And again, this clip is from a meeting that we infiltrated. This is the Seattle Revolutionary Socialists. This was a meeting where they were explicitly talking about abolish the family. And, you know, maybe I made some faces in it and, looked like a crazy person. But let me play you this clip. This is what they talk about when they're behind closed doors. This is what it's like to be in a socialist meeting, so that you guys get a sense of what is actually said when people like you aren't listening. And we'll do this.
Existence and acceptance in society of queer and trans people is a threat to the social narrative that the ruling class uses to uphold the structure of the nuclear family, an exploitative structure they created for their own ends. They attempt to uphold that structure by propagating narratives that women and men are inherently different from each other by nature, that sex and gender are the same thing, and that people who transgress these fabricated boundaries are at best sick and at worst predatory. In a word, bullshit.
Where it is that the origin of like oppression of queer people, both trans and also gay people, there's a common origin, and in terms of the nuclear family being a very useful tool for reproducing new workers and having a system in which to train them through specifically women's oppression in the form of making them handle, like the term you used was reproductive labor, which is a term that we Marxists use to describe just like everything that it takes to train and raise and otherwise prepare the next generation of workers after they're born.
I hear a lot of rhetoric online, and especially in right-wing circles, of like abolition of the nuclear family, and they want to come after traditional gender roles and traditional nuclear family and like one man, one woman, and the kids and the dogs and the 2.5 fences or whatever it is. And they kind of paint it as if that husband, wife, 2.5 kids, and a golden retriever is like how it is, how it's always been, and how like it's just human nature. It's just the way it is. But when I first kind of started, exploring Marxism and read Engels' book on the origin of the family, it really is, you think about the nuclear family, and it was essentially created to send men to work in factories for low wages and high output, and then was meant to keep women home, isolated, so that they can't independently organize, and then also, raising the next generation of workers so that they basically have a complete endless flow. And when you look at the nuclear family like that in an honest lens, abolition of the nuclear family doesn't sound so big and scary. And it's these little pieces and these little, specific phrases that get taken out of context to make Marxism seem like this kind of evil, scary thing. But in reality, abolition of the nuclear family is part of liberation for women, liberation for queer people, liberation for trans people. So yeah, I think that's a really interesting topic. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you very much, Katie.
Shit, I was muted. I was muted. I'm back. So that was just a brief clip of the Abolish the Family stuff. You can find the full video on the YouTube channel, but I do want to point out we need to give Brian a good dressing down here. So Brian says, you didn't need to go undercover. Can you still not hear me? No, you guys can hear me. You guys can hear me, right? There's a delay. So I need ones in the chat if you can hear me. Okay, it's fixed. Thank you. So Brian said, you didn't need to go undercover to hear this stuff. There's entire YouTube channels about all of this. Well, here's the thing, Brian, that you might not understand. I have watched almost all the Abolish the Family content there is publicly on YouTube. And what we just watched is not available publicly on YouTube. And what we just watched is them saying something in a different way because they didn't think they were being recorded. So this idea that we don't get any additional information by going undercover, either in person or infiltrating their private meetings, that's actually like, I mean, no offense, Brian, but fuck off retarded. We get a ton of additional information by me going to these events in person. We find out explicitly, Brian, do the YouTube channels that you watch, do they have the propaganda that these people are reading? Do you know what propaganda they're reading that inspire these ideas based on the YouTube channel? I'm going to answer for you. No, you don't. You don't. You only find out the propaganda they're reading and what's inspiring them when you actually go to their events in person. You find out so much more information in person than you do online. You find out information about organizations. You find out information about, you get to actually be a fly on the wall of the conversations that they think are not being recorded. So it is absolute bullshit that you can learn all of the information that I teach people just by watching YouTube videos. Now, you can watch YouTube videos, and Brian, I'm going to bet you have no understanding of the amount of content that's on YouTube. You probably found a YouTube channel. Oh, yeah. Oh, you did? Hey, Brian, can you teach us why socialists want to abolish the family? This is a question just for Brian. Brian knows everything, guys, and we know nothing. So, Brian, I would like you to teach everyone right now, why do communists want to abolish the nuclear family? You know everything because you watched everything on YouTube about this? Go ahead, teach us, bro. Explain it to us. Clearly, we're waiting for you. No one else. We're not moving on today until Brian explains to us in the chat why communists want to abolish the nuclear family. Because Brian knows everything. No, Brian, that's not the question I asked you. Now I need you to shut the fuck up, and I need you to open your ears, and I need you to listen to me. Because if you chat in again and you do not answer the question that I asked you, you're going to be permanently banned from my channel. So the question that you were asked, that I expect you to answer, and if you do not answer it, I'm going to permanently ban you from my channel, so we will never hear from you again. The question I asked you is, if you've watched so much of this content on YouTube, why do communists want to abolish the nuclear family? Nope, incorrect. Do you want to try again? That is not remotely the correct answer. So obviously you're not watching the right YouTube channel, Brian. Do you want to try again? This is only for Brian. This is for no one else. We're waiting. You get one more chance, and then we're going to answer the question for you. Why do communists want to abolish the nuclear family, Brian? Nope. Wrong. 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 Do you know communists don't believe in gender? Do you want to try one more time? Do you want to do one more guess? Because you're the expert, Brian. Of course, you're the one who's watched all the YouTube channels, right? You've now gotten 2 wrong answers. We're going to give you one more try. Do you want to try again, or do you want to admit you don't know? We're waiting. Brian, you can admit you don't know, bro. You can admit that you don't know. But if you don't admit that you don't know, we're going to give you a really strong dressing down, and the half of my chat is going to answer, and then you're going to feel really fucking stupid. We're waiting. We're waiting. We're waiting. How does it uphold the capitalist system, Brian? How? You're the one that's watched all the YouTube videos. You don't seem to know what you're talking about from watching all the YouTube videos. Very disappointing performance, Brian. I was assured by you that you learned everything you needed to know by watching YouTube videos, and there's no need to go undercover. So why can't you explain what this means? Why can't you explain it? We're waiting. What does that mean? Still not using the words. Does anyone in the chat want to explain to Brian why communists want to abolish the nuclear family? Because, Brian, I promise you my chat knows more than you do. Does anyone want to explain to Brian why they want... No, that's not... Yeah, you did put it in the Communist Manifesto. That's not the right answer, though. So you've literally learned nothing from all those YouTube videos you watched, huh? Brian, the correct answer is they want to abolish the nuclear family because it reproduces capitalism via social reproduction theory. It is the reproduction mechanism of capitalism. That is the language. That is specifically what we're going to be talking about today. Well, I know you don't know what I want to hear because you don't know what you're fucking talking about. You don't know what you're talking about because you just watched cherry pick YouTube videos and you said, I know everything about Abolish the Family and I'm going to teach everyone else. You don't know shit about shit, bro. Nope. It does do that, but that's not what we're looking for. We're talking about social reproduction theory, bro. Social reproduction theory. No, you didn't tell me shit. And now, Brian, I'm very sorry, but because you are not accepting the answer, you're getting put in a 24-hour timeout. I don't want to hear from you again for the rest of the day. You can come back, Brian, but if you ever pretend to know more than me again, and then you put on that piss poor performance, because listen, guys, there are smart people on my YouTube channel. There really are. I learn things from my audience every day. But when someone comes on my channel and says, excuse me, I know better than you, and you don't have to do this X, Y, B, and Z, and then it turns out they actually know fucking nothing, those people need to go to the back of the class, sit down, shut the fuck up, and try not to break anything, because my audience knows more than them. So enjoy your time out, Brian. You can come back tomorrow, and if you come back tomorrow and you put on the same piss poor display that you put on today, we're just going to permanently ban you from the channel because we don't have to have you here. Anyway, that was the first video we wanted to watch from the Seattle Revolutionary Socialists, just because I wanted to give you guys just a little bit of a taste that they do actually talk like this in person. And so that's that. Let's move on. Yep. Well, I mean, specifically the nuclear family. And this is actually a perfect transition. Brian, whether he meant to or not, actually gave us a perfect transition into this next presentation. So, the reason that communists want to abolish the nuclear family is because of something called social reproduction theory. The essence of social reproduction theory is that social systems will reproduce the values of those systems until that reproduction is disrupted in some way. When it comes to the idea of capitalism, you always have to remember, for the left, capitalism is both an economic model and it is a cultural model. When we're talking about queer Marxism and social reproduction theory and abolish the family is squarely under the header of queer Marxism, at least for me. When we're talking about queer Marxism, they are more focused on the cultural aspects of capitalism than they are on the economic aspects of capitalism. So what do we mean by the cultural aspects? We mean people getting married in a monogamous two-person relationship. We mean people getting jobs that uphold capitalist society. We mean people having kids and raising those kids with capitalist values. Always remember, the definition of capitalism for the far left is private property ownership. In the case of Abolish the Family, the very specific piece of private property ownership that applies is the left believes that parental rights over your children are a form of private property ownership. They believe that because parental rights over your children, it does a couple things. They kind of equate it to a slavery argument where they believe that children, socialists are a little bit like Scientologists in some ways, in that socialists believe that children are but little adults that are their own autonomous human beings that can make all their decisions on their own. And therefore, parental rights, they believe, are a form of ownership where the parents own the children, just like owners owned slaves back in the day. So that's one reason they consider parental rights to be a form of private property ownership. Another reason they consider parental rights to be a form of private property ownership is because of generational wealth. Because if parents can pass generational wealth down to their children, that keeps all of the wealth, the houses, the money, the land, whatever, within the privatized family unit. They call the family unit the private nuclear family, the Fordist nuclear family, the bourgeois nuclear family. They might the capitalist family sometimes. They have all sorts of different names for it. But the essential component is that they believe that the nuclear family privatizes resources to make them only available to an exclusive number of people, the people who happen to be in that family, which keeps them out of the hands of the collective, and parental rights allow people to pass those resources from parent to child. So that is another way that the nuclear nuclear family perpetuates and reproduces capitalism. There's also arguments around community care, which basically the whole idea of universal health care comes from the idea that we shouldn't be beholden to our parents for insurance and things like that. Everyone should have access to all the resources. So abolish the family is actually a very complicated issue. It is not because they don't have kids. Socialists have kids. Many socialist activists are second or third generation socialists. They have kids. They also have childcare programs. At socialist meetings, they have childcare. At the New York Anarchist Book Fair that I was just at over the weekend, they literally had childcare. And what they do in socialist childcare programs is they have the kids play socialist games and learn socialist things, and they do that while the adults are actually having meetings. They take there is actually a socialist version of the game Monopoly. I saw it in person. So what they'll do is they'll take popular board games like Monopoly and they'll create socialist versions of those games. And those are the games that the kids play when they're in socialist daycare that teaches them socialist values. So this is not about them not having kids. Socialists do not abort all their children. Tim Pool is a fuck off moron. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Do not listen to him when he says that. This is also not about them hating their parents. They don't do this because they hate their parents. They want to abolish the nuclear family because they do actually genuinely believe that, and I'm not saying I agree with them, but I'm explaining to you their perspective. They do genuinely believe that they are trying to create a better world for everyone, and that a better world for everyone will be created if they abolish the nuclear family. So there is something. What I want to articulate to people is, abolish the family is painted a certain way on the right. And for me, it is an extremely evil concept. I do not support this idea. I think this idea is garbage. However, I want people to understand that socialists are pushing these ideas not because they're evil, not because they don't have kids, not because they hate their parents, not because they want people beholden to the state over their family. It's not any of those reasons. It is because they believe that they genuinely believe that if they disrupt the social reproduction of capitalism, they are going to create a better world for everyone. And that's part of the problem, because they don't have evil intent. The people who fight this fight think that they are being righteous. They think they are helping. And so it's one of those things where you have to understand that this is the drive to push this particular concept is not coming from an evil place. And that's actually what makes it more dangerous. Okay? Does anyone have any questions before we jump into this presentation and you can hear directly from the communists? Because everything I do, guys, I always present primary sources. You know that. Everything that I just explained to you is going to be backed up with this video from the Denver Communists. Murphy's Pool, thank you for the super chat. This is late and busy, even though it worries me. I do appreciate the risk you take going undercover, Murphy's Pool. I love you, bro. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Appreciate it. Let's see. I think they're a 10 out of 10 threat, and you keep coming back and asking the same question, and I'm giving you the same fucking answer every time. They are a massive threat, so sit back and listen and learn. All right? Cool. Yeah, for our purposes, there is no difference. And the reason I say that is socialists in the real world, they will call themselves socialists, communists, and Marxists in the same sentence. So for our purposes, there's no difference, because socialism leads to communism. Socialism is the transitionary mechanism for communism, and socialists in the real world identify themselves as both socialists and communists. Okay, so it's like you just have to it's one of those things where, is there a difference in the the textbook? Yeah, of course, but what I care about is how socialists present and what they do in the real world. All right. Well, we're going to jump into this presentation now, guys. This is a presentation from the Denver Communists. It was given about 4.5 years ago, so it's a little bit older, but the content of the presentation really holds up. And so you're going to hear directly from far-left communists why they want to abolish the nuclear family and what they believe. Everyone, please make sure you mount the like button for me. Everyone, please make sure you are subscribed to the channel. If you want to be subscribed to the channel, I stream Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Let's get this party started.
All right, cool. So let's talk about social reproduction theory. Got a little slideshow for you. Inessa Armand, a Bolshevik who established the department of the department of the post-1917 Communist Party devoted to women's issues, made the following observation. If women's liberation is unthinkable without communism, then communism is unthinkable without women's liberation. Neither is possible without the other. For Marxists,
what does that mean? If women's liberation is unthinkable without communism, then communism is unthinkable without women's liberation. What does that mean? Do you think? You guys are going to learn more by participating in the chat. Please don't be afraid to get the wrong answer. It's incredibly logically consistent, Edward, but you don't understand the logic. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to explain to you the logic. It is incredibly logically consistent. Communism is unthinkable without women's liberation. What does that mean? Yep, they don't make a distinction in gender. Okay, let's break it down. What does women's liberation mean? What does the term, let's even break it down more than that. We have new people. What does the term liberation mean? Just the term liberation. I'm going to go through this slowly so you guys understand the language. Oh, Adrian. They have to liberate women from the family and the home in order to abolish the nuclear family and stop the reproduction of capitalism. Yes. Excellent answer. Excellent answer. Freeing women from capitalism, that's what women's liberation means. Exactly. Exactly. Okay, so liberation. Anytime you hear the word liberation, that means to free oneself from capitalism. So women's liberation is going to be freeing women from the oppressive system of capitalism. How do you free women from the oppressive system of capitalism? You abolish gender entirely. You abolish gender because gender takes away the role that women have. Gender pushes the role that women have in social reproduction theory. If you abolish the gender binary, you abolish the concept of gender, you will liberate women from the oppressive force of capitalism, and you will liberate them from their reproductive role within the nuclear family. Well, they believe men should be liberated as well, but for right now, women are the people who have the children. So they don't want women to exist. They don't want men to exist either. They also want men to be liberated from the gender binary, but men are not the ones having the children. And they do know that. They believe that capitalism created the women's role of being the literal mode of reproduction by bearing and raising the children within the nuclear family. Men can't have children, therefore this presentation is not about men. It's not that they don't care about men, but this is not the topic for today. Does it also mean women should not bear the brunt of raising their own children? Nope, it does not mean allowing the state to do it. That's a conservative interpretation. So no, that's not what it means at all. No, it does not mean that feminism and communism are the same. And you know how I know that? Because Sophie Lewis, who we're going to watch next, specifically wrote a book about how feminism and communism isn't the same. This is literally an entire book that I got. Sophie signed it for me and everything. This book specifically says that feminism and communism are not the same. It's called enemy feminism. So no, that's not correct. That is a conservative interpretation. That is not relevant here. All right, let's continue.
Gender and sexual liberation has never been viewed as only the concern of women, non-binary, and LGBTQ people, but the responsibility of all revolutionaries as central to liberatory struggle. Marx and Engels provided a skeleton of theory around gender oppression and social reproduction that Marxists have and continue to add flesh to. They stood for women's liberation from the start and understood it to be the core to the fight for socialism. In the Marxist analysis, of primary importance is how humans interact with nature and each other to make the things we need and want. That's economics, how we plan, cooperate, and organize ourselves to produce stuff. We consider that most fundamental to human society, how we get by, how we make things, and the social relations involved in making things. We call those the relations of production. How
The social relations involved in making things. In this case, they consider abolish the family the social relations that produce the next generation of proletarian workers to be oppressed under capitalism. That's what they're talking about.
humans organize to produce and reproduce their means of life. Most importantly, who controls that process and who produces a surplus. The dominant ideas and institutions of society, like government, law, religion, morality, and culture, arise from and enshrine the relations of production. The way things are becomes the way things should be, must be, and have always been. There's one fight, one struggle, one fight, because all of our social problems share a common root in the mode of production, capitalism.
Pretty on the nose, right? As a reminder, communist socialists, they believe that capitalism literally creates all problems in society. That is why abolishing capitalism is always their number one goal. They believe that every single problem we have, racism, gender discrimination, oppression of queer people, environmental justice, climate change, all the Greta Thunberg stuff, like the abolish the police stuff, police brutality, basically like every social problem, every single problem we have is created by capitalism, and that's why their goal is always and forever to get rid of capitalism. So they want to raise kids as a group? Yes. Basically, yes. They want to raise kids like on a commune where everyone is responsible for everyone else's kids and there are no parental rights. Don't focus on that right now because it's not relevant to why they want to abolish the nuclear family. There are different conceptions of what it looks like. That's not the topic for today. Just focus on learning the intricacies of why they want to do it.
Under capitalism, human labor power is focused on making commodities to be sold for profit. Labor power itself is commodified in the process, and it is the only commodity that is produced outside of the circuit of commodity production. Marxist social reproduction theorist Tithi Bhattacharya says, if labor power produces value, how is labor power itself produced? If
labor power produces value, then how is labor produced? This is at the core of social reproduction theory. When he says, how is labor produced? What does he mean? What question is he asking? And by the way, Chichi Bhattacharya, this is the person who I recorded saying earlier today, don't say these things because these people are recording us. Except the recording didn't come out. But this is literally the woman I was watching earlier today in a separate thing. So what does that mean? How is labor power produced? Babies. When parents, mothers specifically, women, have children within the nuclear family, they are literally producing the future generation of labor workers to be oppressed under capitalism.
labor produces all wealth, who produces the laborer? What kind of processes enable the worker to arrive at the doors of her workplace every day so that she can produce the wealth of society? Many of these processes happen inside the home: eating, sleeping, relaxing, emotional care, play, study, etc. The home is a primary location for social reproduction, but many happen outside of it: education, healthcare, transportation, recreation, shopping, etc. This is the focus of social reproduction theory: the paid and unpaid activities necessary to create, maintain, and restore the commodity of labor power. We can delineate production and reproduction in various ways, but they cannot be fully severed from each other. Capitalism relies on both the labor capitalism relies on both the labor used to produce commodities and the labor used to produce people.
Okay, so I'm going to pause there. Again, capitalism is both an economic model and a cultural model to the left. The labor power to produce commodities is the economic model. The labor power used to produce people, literally giving birth, is the cultural model. The nuclear family is the focal point of the labor power producing people. That's why they want to abolish it. Yes, exactly. Yes, BT. Yes, exactly right. When they say they want to seize the means of production, they don't mean the factories, they mean the people. That's exactly right.
It integrates both profit-making and life-making into a single unitary system. Marxists locate the source of gender oppression in the role of the working class family as a reproducer of labor power for capitalism, and in women's unequal role inside it.
Okay, we need to go back and we need to pick that apart. So I'm just gonna like do this a little bit. Marxists actually he's got it on. What am I doing? He's got it on the screen. Marxists locate the source of gender oppression, the patriarchy, in the role in the working class family as a reproducer of labor power for capitalism. So workers have children within the nuclear family. Those kids grow up to become future workers that are going to be oppressed under capitalism. And central to this is women's oppression, because again, we talked about this yesterday, but just a quick review. When it comes to gender, socialists believe, and they're going to talk about this, socialists believe that capitalism created the socially constructed categories of men and women. It put men in the workplace where they had all the power and all the money. It put women in the home where they did the unpaid labor of having and raising the next generation of proletarian workers in the nuclear family. This is the gender hierarchy. This is also called the patriarchy. In order to get rid of gender, abolish gender, or in order, in order to get rid of capitalism, what they need to do is abolish gender, because that abolishes the gender hierarchy and it creates equity. Only by abolishing the socially constructed roles that were created by capitalism can they create gender equity and liberate women from the oppressive role of reproducing the labor force within the nuclear family. Does everyone understand? I want to do a quick pause because this is a lot of information and I want to make sure everyone understands. Ask questions if you have them. When they say gender equity, they mean abolishing the categories of gender, abolishing men and abolishing women. It's not about one or the other, it's about both. Well, in the socialist utopia, everyone works, and if everyone doesn't work, then you don't eat. So they don't care. One more time. Okay. Socialists believe that capitalism created the socially constructed categories of men and women. They do not believe that gender is biological. They believe it is a made-up category. Capitalism put men in the workplace where they had all the power and all the money, women in the home where they did the unpaid labor of having and raising the next generation of workers in the form of the children. This is called the patriarchy. This is also called the gender binary. Men and women, too, is a binary. In order to achieve socialism and abolish capitalism, they need to abolish the gender binary, which would create gender equity, because if you just get rid of the categories of men and women, then everyone's on the same level playing field. Once they get rid of the categories of men and women, which will liberate women from being oppressed by gender, that in turn is going to lead to the destruction of the nuclear family. Hope that helps. Let's keep going. Guys, I understand people want to know what it looks like afterwards. We will do that another day. I promise you. I've done videos about it. I've written articles about it. I have actually already created content answering that question. I just don't want to go down that road because it's going to take us off topic, okay? So I want you to focus on this and learning this. We will get to what it looks like afterwards at some point, I promise. Why would there need to be a benefit system? In the Marxist utopia, there's no money, there's free healthcare for all, there's access to all of the resources. They don't, there's no benefits. There's no insurance. There is no insurance in the Marxist utopia. Insurance is eliminated, money is eliminated, everyone has access to all the resources. So, yeah. See, this is why I don't go down that road of what they want to do after, because it's a total different discussion that just needs to take place another time. Let's continue.
In the role of the working class family as a reproducer of labor power for capitalism, and in women's unequal role inside it. And not just women, but gender nonconforming and LGBTQ people as well, as gender and sexual oppression affects all. Capitalism offloads social reproduction onto the working class by tasking women primarily with the reproduction, maintenance, and regeneration of the workforce, often while also performing waged labor. Unpaid, typically feminized caregiving labor is vital to the functioning of capitalism.
Yes, this is actually a great observation. This explains why so many college students are now proclaiming non-binary identities. That's exactly right. One of the most, and this is why one of the big distractions that conservative influencers have forced on their audience is this idea of grooming. Now, grooming does happen in schools. I have broken more stories about grooming in schools than almost any other independent journalist in the country. It's what I did. It's what I did almost full time a couple years ago. So grooming is a real thing. But grooming is not what most conservatives think it is, because it's not about sexualizing children. Now, does sexualization of children happen? Yes, and that's a tragedy, and people should always have a watchful eye for that. But the most insidious grooming that has happened in public schools is convincing kids that gender is not a real thing. Grooming kids to believe they're non-binary, grooming kids to believe they're queer. And this is the whole purpose of Drag Queen Story Hour. The purpose of Drag Queen Story Hour is to teach children that gender is not a real thing. You can change your gender as easy as changing an outfit, stuff like that. So I'm not suggesting that people shouldn't constantly be vigilant for the sexualization of children. I'm not suggesting that. But what I am suggesting is the constant, never-ending, perpetual focus on pedophiles has completely distracted from what the actual game is that the left is playing. Because if people are always looking over here, pedophiles, always and perpetually, no one was looking over here when they were teaching all the kids that gender wasn't real. And it was the teaching of the kids that gender wasn't real that was the biggest problem. And it was the teaching of the kids that gender wasn't real that leads to this. So this is why, people have got to be really strategic and really disciplined about how they're looking at this information, because what typically happens is the minute you mention something to do with kids, people go, pedophiles, and it's like all of the attention and all of the outrage goes to that, and none of it ends up on where it actually needs to be right now, which is teaching kids that gender is not real. So this is the monster, and this is the problem, and this is how socialists and communists are going to abolish gender entirely, is by teaching kids from the time they're 5 years old that it was never real in the first place. You don't abolish gender by passing a law. You don't abolish gender by a proclamation from a president. You abolish gender by teaching people that it's not real when they're too young to understand differently. And that is the most insidious form of grooming that has happened in public schools, and it has gone almost completely ignored by the conservative right because of their constant, never-ending obsession with pedophiles.
Which privatizes and atomizes the labor and the costs associated with raising, nurturing, and maintaining workers. This is why the liberation of women and gender nonconforming people is predicated upon the overthrow of capitalism and its replacement with socialism. Nancy Fraser said, a Marxist social reproduction theorist, capitalist societies have separated the work of social reproduction from that of economic production, associating the first with women and the second with men primarily. They have remunerated reproductive activity. I'm sorry. They have.
Hey guys, I hear people asking about Christianity in the chat. We need to focus on the topic. I am begging you guys to focus on the topic. I can show you videos of Marxists talking about what they think about Christianity and religion, but we're going to do that another day, okay? Please focus on the topic at hand, and we are not talking about Christianity right now. They haven't even brought it up. So if they haven't brought it up in the presentation, please don't distract the entire chat by going into that discussion. This is a classroom, guys. We're here to learn this today. I promise you we will do the Christian question another day. I really do have a whole presentation about this that we can watch from Socialists, but I want to focus on this right now.
Remunerated reproductive activities in the coin of love and virtue, while compensating productive work in that of money. And back to Titi Bhattacharya. Because capitalism is a thing-making system, not a life-making system, these activities and these workers are severely undervalued. Social reproductive workers are the worst paid. They are the first to go. They face constant sexual harassment and often direct violence. The function of the working class family is to provide the system with workers. There's
Pretty on the nose, isn't it? The function of the working class family, that's the nuclear family, is to provide the capitalist system with new workers. This is what they believe. Hey, you were the one that sent the super chat yesterday. Thank you for sending that super chat to Nick. I appreciate it. I about had a heart attack when someone told me that someone sent a super chat about me to Nick. And then I saw that it was a really lovely super chat. And so thank you for sending that. I really appreciate it. I graduated high school in 2018 and don't recall any of this in the classroom, only learned it online. Well, you know, I mean, okay, do you recall them teaching stuff about, 2018, you may have gotten lucky, but I bet you if you think back to, I bet you there was talk about gender that you may not remember. Maybe I'm wrong. Did you go to you may have gone to like a religious school or a private school. I don't know. This is not to say they're not teaching abolish the family stuff like this in high school. Okay. But when did this stuff start being about gender not being biologically real? I mean, it started being taught in schools really in like 2008, 2009, 2010, but every school teaches things differently. So pretty much this stuff really made its way into classrooms in 2008, 2009, 2010 in schools all over the country. A lot of it has been taught at schools ever since then. That was kind of the turning point of a lot of this, but that's not to say that every single student in every single school is getting the same instruction, right? You may have gotten lucky. You may have just gotten lucky. Maybe you went to a religious school. Maybe you lived in a conservative area and they didn't have that stuff there yet. So it really does kind of like depend. But they probably were teaching it in school at that time, and you just may not have noticed it because a lot of what they do teaches in this stuff is really, really subtle. But thanks again for that super chat. That was awesome.
two other ways that the system gets workers: through slavery and immigration. This means not only making babies, raising and educating them to be good workers, but replenishing existing workers on a daily basis by providing them with food, clothing, shelter, recreation, sleep, etc. Rather than being collectivized, socialized, and borne by the state or the capitalist class directly, these tasks have been individualized, privatized, and dumped onto workers themselves. Gender oppression did not exist in pre-class societies and only developed as societies became divided into classes. Contemporary archaeology and anthropology have validated these key arguments made by
pre-class societies. They mean indigenous people. They mean like indigenous culture and stuff like that. Listen, so socialists are Socialists are conflicted on when class society actually started. Some people, some socialists, and this tends to be the Denver communists tend to believe that class society started with the Industrial Revolution. There are some socialists who believe that class society started with farming being the first private property ownership that like controlled wealth in the nuclear family. There are some socialists believe that class society started in ancient Sumeria and that we literally have to abolish all of civilization in order to abolish capitalism. So there's no so far as I can tell, there's no kind of consistent answer about when class society actually started. But what I will say is they're probably referring here to like indigenous culture, like Native Americans and stuff like that, when they say pre-class society.
Engels almost 140 years ago in The Origin of the Family, Private Property, and the State. Early human societies were classless.
Hang on. Listen, he's going to explain again. We're going to listen to this again.
Gender oppression did not exist in pre-class societies and only developed as societies became divided into classes. Contemporary archaeology and anthropology have validated these key arguments made by Engels almost 140 years ago in The Origin of the Family, Private Property, and the State. Early human societies were classless and egalitarian. Marx and Engels called these hunter-gatherer and horticultural economies primitive communism.
Primitive communism.
Women
right.
were able to combine parenting and productive labor in the home as there was no strict demarcation between productive and reproductive activities. Labor was divided by gender, but because women were central to production, systemic gender oppression was non-existent. Class society changed that. Everywhere settled agriculture emerged, so did classes and class conflict. Thousands of years ago, from the Fertile Crescent to Mesoamerica.
So he's saying farming there, like settled agriculture. So there are some socialists again who believe that capitalism is defined as private property ownership. Private property ownership includes ownership of land. This is why borders are considered to be problematic for some communists, because so why are communists constantly attacking ICE? Because communists don't believe borders should exist. Oh yeah, we've covered Shumalith Firestone. We've covered this. We're not talking about Shumalith today, okay? That's a whole, people are not ready for fucking Shumalith Firestone, okay? We've covered that before. We did a specific Sophie Lewis class all about Shumalith Firestone. It's really fucked up. We're not talking about that right now. What we are talking about is ICE and border control, okay? What we are talking about is ICE. Okay, so capitalism is defined as private property ownership. What do you need to have private property? You need borders. Borders mean private property. That means borders around the country. That means borders around the state, borders around the city, borders around your house. So when they're talking about settled agriculture, they believe that essentially farmers who privatized the land in order to extract wealth from the land were the first capitalists, and that's when class society was created. When the land was privatized so it could be farmed by the farmers and to have that farm contribute to the private individual wealth of the family.
Many places in between. The plow and advances in irrigation enabled societies to grow more food than they needed. The first surpluses. Tiny idle classes came to dominate the surpluses produced by massive laboring classes. This is also when the first cops appear, the first defenders of wealth that isn't theirs.
There it is. Cops, defenders of wealth that isn't theirs.
With class society, the family as we know it began to take form. The specific form of the family has varied in accordance with the mode of production. Just as gender roles are socially and not naturally constructed, the family is a social institution, not a biological necessity or an eternal form.
Okay, we need to stop and just read this again. Just as gender roles are socially, not naturally constructed, I told you earlier that they believe capitalism created gender. They're socially constructed roles. So now they're saying again, gender roles, the roles of men and women, are socially constructed by capitalism. They're not real. They're not biological. They also think the family is a socially constructed institution, not a biological reality. So the family as a unit was a socially constructed institution to privatize wealth, privatize property, keep it out of the hands of the collective, not a biological reality. Does everyone understand? Socialists believe that capitalism creates all categories. Anytime you have a category, you have oppression. Okay? Is everyone tracking? Cool.
Settled agricultural societies were needed. Settled agricultural societies needed women to bear more children to help out in the fields. And organizing into family groups enabled ownership and inheritance to be established.
Organizing into family groups allowed for inheritance to be established. Listen again.
To bear more children to help out in the fields. And organizing into family groups enabled ownership and inheritance to be established.
Organizing into family groups allowed ownership and inheritance to be established. So again, one of the reasons socialists want to abolish the nuclear family is because the nuclear family allows for the passing of privatized wealth from parent to child. Thus, when a father gives, like in his will, gives his son his house and his land, that keeps the house and the land within the private family unit and out of the hands of the collective. That's privatized wealth. Privatized wealth creates all oppression. Therefore, the nuclear family, the family unit, which facilitates inheritance, creates oppression by passing wealth down from generation to generation.
Class society also brought a shift toward patrilineage and men as heads of household, which Engels called, quote, the world historic defeat of the female sex. Marxism, unlike patriarchy theory, recognizes that class society also brought the subordination of most men to a tiny minority. As production for exchange overtook production for use, work and home became separate spaces. Women were predominantly relegated to social reproduction and left out of the, quote, productive profit-making economy. Under these conditions, sexual division of labor eroded sexual equality. The nuclear family is the engine of social reproduction.
Boom!
To maintain the family's supply of cheap, readily available labor power, gender, sex, and sexuality must be policed. Misogynist, homophobic, and transphobic ideas reflect and reinforce capitalist social arrangements.
So in order for the nuclear family to continue to reproduce capitalism, they believe that the roles of gender, men and women, must be policed to force people into those roles to continue to reproduce capitalism. Does everyone understand? Yes, so polyamory is one of the ways that they want to queer the nuclear family. Not every single person who is polyamorous is a socialist, but a lot of socialists and queer Marxists in particular, a lot of queer Marxists are polyamorous. We'll talk another day about this. Is one of the most fucked up things, actually. This is something I've wanted to do an expose on forever. There is a whole field of socialist psychotherapists that exist purely to help socialists be in polyamorous relationships. I'm not making this up. Google queer therapists sometime and just see what comes up. Queer therapy is one of the most fucked up things that you can possibly imagine. We've covered it a couple times on the channel, but it's just like there is an entire industry of therapy that is designed explicitly to help socialists go from being in like capitalist relationships to being in queered, polyamorous, polycules, all this stuff. Oftentimes they're also talking about BDSM and how to integrate BDSM into this as well. I'm not making this up. And so yeah, polyamory is a big part of what they're trying to push. Yeah, don't Google that. Don't Google that. Yo, 50715 over on Rumble with the $20 Rumble rant. So socialists are like 80% correct. Is that why reps misdirect instead of address it? Yeah, I don't know what you mean when you say socialists are 80% correct. I do not believe that socialists are 80% correct. Appreciate the $20 over on Rumble. If you want to clarify what you mean when you say socialists are 80% correct, let me know and I can answer to that. Well, yeah, I mean, they probably do, actually, unironically. I don't know that I've ever heard them say that, but they probably actually do believe that. Yeah, so socialists actually love sci-fi. Socialists actually write sci-fi books. So yeah, they've actually probably they probably read Hamlin, honestly. So like a lot of socialist ideas unironically are inspired by sci-fi. Thanks, average person, for the super chat. This is what's so overwhelming about this topic, the amount of tangents you could go on, and those tangents have tangents. Yeah, there's all sorts of tangents within this topic. This is why I'm really trying to keep everyone focused on just understanding this. But there's a lot. If you have to, like, listen, you have to understand the foundation of the argument. Once you understand the foundation of the argument, then we can go into all the other tangents.
As Marx wrote, it's not the consciousness of men that determines their existence, but their social existence that determines their consciousness. Monogamy, intended for women only, ensures that private property passes only to, quote, legitimate heirs.
Monogamy, which is intended for women only, ensures that private property, that's what capitalism is only passed to legitimate heirs, but monogamy is only intended for women. They consider marriage, a monogamous relationship, to be a form of propertied relationship in which the spouses essentially own each other. This is why they're against monogamy. This is part of why they're pushing polyamory.
That determines their consciousness. Monogamy, intended for women only, ensures that private property passes only to, quote, legitimate heirs. Subsequently, moral rules formed to preserve monogamy.
Boom.
What might happen to the family under communism?
Oh!
Engels said communist society will transform the relations between the sexes into a purely private matter which only concerns the persons involved and into which society has no occasion to intervene. It can do this since it does away with private property and educates children on a communal basis, and in this way removes the two bases of traditional marriage.
So let's read this again because a lot of you have asked, Karlyn, what do they want to replace this with? Well, let's listen to them. Communist society will transform the relationships between the sexes since it does away with private property ownership. That means marriage. Marriage is a form of private property ownership. Home ownership is a form of private property ownership. Land ownership is a form of private property ownership. And don't forget this, guys. Parental rights over your children is considered to be a form of private property ownership under communism. That's why this says it does away with private property and educates children on a communal basis. The children belong to the community. The children don't belong to the parents. The children belong to the community. Does everyone understand? Well, people could be monogamous, but marriage itself wouldn't be a thing. Marriage is the form of propertied relationship. So if you as an individual just want to be with another individual, no one's going to stop you. No one is going to force you to be in a polycule in the socialist utopia, but it's not going to have the same institution around it as marriage, and it's not going to have parental rights over the kids and stuff like that. The collective makes decisions for the collective. We'll talk about their decision-making structure another day. But they do actually have a process for decision-making. No, you can't, actually. No, you can't. And actually, this is one of the dumbest owns that you guys can ever do. This is another bullshit conservative talking point, no offense. You can short circuit them by just telling them that all this existed before capitalism. Do you know what they're going to say to you? They're going to laugh in your face and they're going to say, no, it didn't. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. So no, you cannot make them short circuit like this. They're just going to look at you and think that you're dumb and that you don't understand what they actually believe. So please, no conservative bullshit talking points in the chat, please. I have seen socialists talk about how the body, individual liberties are also a form of private property. I haven't seen that a lot, though, to be fair. And so they don't believe in individualism, they believe in collectivism. They want to get rid of individualism. So there's not an out of the realm possibility that they could believe that the body also belongs to the community. But that's not something they talk about a lot. I've only seen it like once or twice. Well, not just a wife would be property. The husband is also property of the wife. The institution of marriage is the propertied relation. So it's not just the wife that's the property, it's also the husband that's the property. And if it's two gay people that are married, they're in a form of propertied relations. If it's two lesbians that are married, they're in a form of propertied relations. So it's actually both people. Yeah, they believe that capitalism is the origin of the universe. Like, they believe that. Yes. Some socialists believe that capitalism goes back to ancient Sumeria, bro. Like I said, we'll talk about this another day. We've already talked about this. Please don't continue distracting. Okay. I don't give a flying fuck what Victor David Hanson believes. I don't give a flying fuck what Stephen Hicks believes. What I am trying to teach you, if you would be so kind as to shut the fuck up and listen, I am teaching you what the left believes. How Victor David Hanson feels about that is fucking irrelevant. How Stephen Hicks feels about that is fucking irrelevant. How you feel about that is fucking irrelevant. We are learning what they believe, not about your fucking feelings. So your job right now is to shut the fuck up and listen to what is being said. And if you cannot do that, I will shut you up so you don't continue distracting all of us from learning what is going on. Do you understand? This is not an Instagram. This is a class. See, the class understands, though. The class understands. What does the community get from ownership or belonging of the kids to the community? You know, I mean, there's a lot of ways to answer that, right? They get everyone raised in a cohesive way. They get to dictate the education of everyone. They get to dictate it's like, you know, essentially like it makes it easier to control the community as a collective if you are raising and controlling the education for all the kids. So the collective is what makes decisions about the kids. The individual parents is not what makes decisions about the kids. The collective makes the decision about the kids. Most importantly, there would be no private education in the socialist utopia. There's no private schooling. There's no homeschooling in the socialist utopia. Everyone goes through the same education system, the same indoctrination system. And so that creates a society in which the population is very easy to control. Let's continue. Thank you. Thank you, DJ. Thank you.
The dependence rooted in private property of the woman on the man and of the children.
Listen, okay, hang on. We're going to talk to this. I'm struggling to understand how they think any of this is good. That's because you don't understand them. Not yet. But your job right now is to not understand how they think this is good. Your job right now is to understand what they actually believe. You will come to understand them more as you understand what they actually believe. But that's what I need you to focus on. Not trying to figure out how do they think this is a good idea. Put that aside for a second. You have to compartmentalize. Right now, we're focusing on the what. We're not focusing on the why. Okay?
Children on the parents.
Hang on, I'm going to rewind a little bit.
Children on a communal basis, and in this way removes the two bases of traditional marriage, the dependence rooted in private property of the woman on the man and of the children on the parents.
They just called children the private property of the parents. Do you guys hear that? Again, listen, they just called children the private property of the parents.
And in this way removes the two bases of traditional marriage, the dependence rooted in private property of the woman on the man and of the children on the parents.
There it is.
After the 1917 revolution, the Bolsheviks enacted legislation that gave women the right to vote and to hold public office, the right to divorce on demand.
Actually, you know what? We're going to end it there because the first part of the presentation is really the best part of the presentation. I wanted to give you guys a good overview of what they thought about the nuclear family and gender. If you want to go back and watch the full presentation, this is on the Denver Communist YouTube channel, and it is called Intro to Social Reproduction Theory by the Denver Communists, so you can find it over there. The reason I want to move on, we've actually watched this before. The back half of the presentation is not as interesting as the first half of the presentation, and I really, really, really want to introduce you guys to Sophie. So if you want to watch that full presentation, you can find it on the Denver Communist YouTube channel. I highly recommend it. We are going to move over to the main event for the day, because this is a little bit of a longer interview. It's about an hour long, and we are going to get some Sophie time. Now, 1 in the chat if you have watched Sophie Lewis with me before. 2 in the chat if you don't know who Sophie Lewis is and this is your first time ever seeing her and you're a little bit afraid and you don't really know what's going on. 1 in the chat if you understand our goddess Sophie. 2 in the chat if you are new to Sophie and this is your first time. We're popping people's cherry today with introducing you guys to Sophie. Okay. Sophie Lewis is our favorite. If you stick around the channel, you will watch a lot of Sophie. I am a Sophie connoisseur. I have watched almost every single thing that this woman has ever said on the internet ever. Sophie has written 2 books about abolishing the nuclear family. One is literally called Abolish the Family. The other, I think, is called Feminists Against Family or something like that. So this is like Sophie's thing. Sophie, for years, traveled around the world trying to do, she does lectures at universities. She writes books about this stuff. She is one of the preeminent Abolish the Family activists in the country. She's also my internet girlfriend. She doesn't like that, but that's okay because I say so, because I cannot quit Sophie Lewis. Okay. So this is an interview that Sophie gave 2 years ago. And she is in an interview with Veriso Books. Veriso Books is one of the socialist book publishers that we follow. And Sophie's going to talk to you about her book, Abolish the Family, and her ideas about it. And there's one specific reason I want to watch this presentation, and you guys are going to know when we hit it. But Sophie says a lot of good stuff in this presentation about what she believes and why we should abolish the family. And so that is what we're going to listen to. So that's what we're getting into now. Please make sure you have mounted the like button if you have not mounted the like button yet. You can see there's her book, Abolish the Family. That's her book right there. Okay, let's get started.
Is taken as provocative when that's actually genuinely not the intention.
Actually, let's maybe go back to
the history, let's be real, of experiments in communizing child rearing have often been, messy. And guess what? So have all attempts at overthrowing capitalism so far, which doesn't mean that it was a mistake to try. Writing a book with a cover that says abolish the family is taken as provocative when that's actually genuinely not the intention. Abolition is the concept we have for a simultaneous destruction, preservation, and sort of transformation of something. We will find out what the social is when we stop running indoors to get our needs met in this private realm. You can't overthrow capitalism, I think, without changing the family. And you also definitely can't change the family without overthrowing capitalism.
You can't overthrow capitalism without abolishing the family, and you can't change the family without abolishing capitalism. That's why we love Sophie. She says it so clearly, the quiet part out loud, like right off the bat.
Overthrow capitalism. Social is when we stop running indoors to get our needs met in this private realm. You can't overthrow capitalism, I think, without changing the family. And you also definitely can't change the family without overthrowing capitalism. If you did try to abolish the family without abolishing capitalism, you would create a nightmare worse than what we have.
This is the Verso podcast. My name's Ben Smoke. I am the commissioning editor of Huck Magazine, and I'm here today with Sophie Lewis to talk about your new book, Abolish the Family, a manifesto for care and liberation, which I've already marked up. Okay, let's get cracking. Number one, do you want to take my grandma away from me? Will you take her? Please take her.
I can't promise to take your grandma away.
Okay, well, I'm off then. I'll see you later.
Great, we're done here. No, it's a reasonable question, isn't it? Because people feel like, abolish means destroy. It sounds like abolishing the family, means perhaps separating people forcibly, which is obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but I think it would be a horrible thing. And indeed, it has happened at various points in history that people have tried to.
Listen. You got to do what you got to do. You got to do what you got to do. I, of course, do not encourage vices, but there's a reason I have a vape pen sitting on my desk at all times. Okay, I'm just saying there are coping methods when you're doing this type of work and you're learning this type of material. You've got to get through it somehow. And if you need to smoke something while you're watching this, you know what? Do what you got to do. Of course, there's no weed in this. I would never get high on the internet. That would never happen. Don't accuse me of anything, bro. This is an anxiety pen, all right? That's all it is. Just an anxiety pen. Nothing to see here.
Forcibly, enact forms of reorganization of households. Like I'm not about that. I'm not about forcibly separating people. And abolishing the family is, in a philosophical kind of way, you might want to say that it's about bringing people together for the first time rather than separating them and figuring out a more beautiful.
See, Sophie just said it. This isn't about abolishing the family. This is about bringing people together for the first time. So essentially, again, I really want to emphasize this. Sophie Lewis is not an evil person. She has crazy, fucked up ideas, and she's wrong in everything that she says, but she's not actually an evil person. Sophie believes that by abolishing the restrictive nuclear family, you're actually bringing society together to create one larger family in which everyone cares for everyone else.
In a philosophical kind of way, you might want to say that it's about bringing people together for the first time rather than separating them and figuring out a more beautiful way to be together. But we can maybe expand on what I might mean by that later on. But for sure, no, your gran has got to stay.
Mate, what's the point? I guess that's the thing, isn't it? Because it would be fair to say there is some controversy around the notion of abolishing the family.
I haven't heard of it.
No, I mean, it's been very, very low key. But there's a kickback, and there's a kickback. I was trying to think, because I was reading it kind of last night and trying to figure out, because we'll kind of get into the nitty gritty of it, but it makes a lot of sense from a left perspective when you sort of unpack it. But even from the left, there's this sort of, you're trying to, this is why no one likes.
Hey, chat. I want everyone to tell Amalek that the Jews did it. I want everyone to tell Amalek that Israel killed Charlie Kirk, and I just want everyone to have this experience with me. Everyone tell Amalek that you think Israel killed Charlie Kirk, and you see what happens. I'm not saying I believe that. Of course I don't believe that. I would never say that. Obviously, Israel had nothing to do with it. I don't believe that, but I'm just saying that some people might think that Israel did it, and if you do think that Israel did it, you should tell Amalek that in the chat. And he's about to lose his shit on me. Love you, Amalek. Appreciate you.
The left, you're trying to steal people's families, your killjoys, etc. And this, I kind of wanted to ask you about that visceral reaction from people. You kind of talk about it in the book. You understand that emotional, visceral reaction, but kind of unpacking why we have that. Because I could feel it myself when I was reading it, being like, I'm a mummy's boy, without doubt. and I could feel myself being like, not mama, no.
Yeah.
And it is, one of those sort of like hits you right in the gut. So I wondered if you can kind of unpack that a little for us.
Yeah. Gosh, it's not something I'm consciously doing on purpose to sort of pick the topics, the real wasp's nests, the things that I think somebody put it to me, succeed at pissing everybody off somehow, but it does seem to be where I'm intellectually interested in going. And I am not.
Shall we unpack that?
Yeah.
Hey, look at this. 2 ladies donated 5 channel memberships. Who got a channel membership? Let's see. Leo Gang got a channel membership. Lisa got one. Scott got a channel membership. Na got one. And Dominus got one. Congratulations to everyone who got a channel membership. Channel members can, of course, join us for our spy streams when we do those. So keep an eye out on the community tab looking for posts when we do those spy streams. And all channel members will be able to come and join us as we go inside live socialist trainings. Thanks so much for that.
That's what my analyst is for, I guess. But it's no, well, I suppose more on a more serious note, it's I suppose that I'm called to the challenge of thinking about these really difficult questions of how those intimate spheres are affected by capitalism and how they are political. And the family is this thing that we don't think about as an economic institution or a state institution. We think about it as well, we don't think about it in a way, and when we do, I think there's a kind of understanding that it flows naturally from the fact of human childbirth or something like that, and that you are living with who it is sort of naturally or cosmically ordained for you to live with, and you love them for reasons that are almost like beyond comprehension. That your people, whether they're sort of biologically or legally sanctioned, are your people in a way that has always been this way. People's visceral reaction is something I foreground because I don't think anybody really, very few of us have no fear of the idea of a radical change in the domain of family. We're manufactured through it. It's actually asking you to contemplate something that you cannot contemplate because you are you because of the family. It's how you were produced. So there is a little bit of a heady dimension to this. When people have talked about it in the past, they've insisted that there has to be some element of tolerance among us, the utopians, for the unknowability of what that would look like, to have a story about people and how they are made, how we are made, that is.
So Sophie is essentially saying here, listen, we don't know exactly what's going to happen when we do this. And I mean, Sophie's like, there are a whole bunch of socialists that are just like, they're like utopian futurists, where they're kind of like, well, this could happen, or this could happen, or this could happen over here. And we don't really know. And we won't really know what will happen until we get there. So basically their plan is that they want to overthrow the government and overthrow all of society. But do they really know how it's, I mean, they've got some ideas about things they want to do. They have some ideas about how they want things structured. Again, we will talk about that another day. I've done videos on this. They've got some ideas, but they will also flat out tell you, we're just not really sure. We don't exactly know what's going to happen. So that should make everyone feel better. Hey, 2 ladies, thanks for the super chat. Karlyn, my daughter, say hi. Hi, guys. And I am doing what I can to help others learn what we're really fighting. Much respect. Much respect to you 2 ladies. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Yeah, we're going to play it by ear. It's going to work out. Promise. Sophie does not have any children. However, Sophie's best friend, Emmy O'Brien, who you will also meet on the channel at some point, who also has written a book about Abolish the Family. Emmy O'Brien does have children. There are Abolish the Family communists who have children. Not all of them, but their argument is not about against having children. Their argument is against the nuclear family unit as oppressive to all of society.
To use a bit of a jargonistic word, like non-dyadic, right? Not necessarily viewing people as an addition process of mom and dad, which, I mean, there's more to unpack, but we basically don't know what a post-Oedipal like landscape psychologically for people would be, and we have to tolerate that. But in the meantime, what we can, I think, project ourselves into or imagine is what the world would be like if materially people weren't sort of a bit blackmailed into relying exclusively on the private household for care. So that's not about trying to change.
So this is a crux of an argument that I was explaining earlier. There are a lot of different reasons why socialists want to abolish the nuclear family. One of Sophie's reasons is called the communization of care. Essentially, the argument goes like this. The nuclear family forces people to rely for care on the resources that their family has. If you come from a wealthier family, you're going to have better health care than people who don't come from a wealthy family. This is the basis of the argument for universal health care, is the idea that all resources, all care, whether that be medical or psychological or trans-affirming surgery or abortion on demand, they want all care to be available to all people at all times. And that is part of the basis of the argument. So they say that if we still have the nuclear family, people are relying on their parents' insurance or their family's wealth or things like that for care, which means some people get better care than others. If some people get better care than others, that is fundamentally oppressive. That creates a hierarchy, and it's all based on the resources of the family. So if you just get rid of the family and you make all the resources available to everyone else, then everyone is going to have care. Thanks, Leo, for the super sticker. I appreciate it.
What the world would be like if materially people weren't sort of a bit blackmailed into relying exclusively on the private household for care. So that's not about trying to change the relationships that are nearest and dearest to you. It's about everything else, paradoxically. It's about building the world with all the sort of, I don't know, healthcare, even cooking and food provision services, therapeutic and educational services and infrastructures that would mean that the family was a domain of real choice or real freedom, and you weren't coerced into needing it so much. Yeah. But I think the visceral reaction makes complete sense. I have it too. I wrote my first book about the labor of pregnancy at a time when my mother was dying of cancer, and we had quite a difficult relationship, but there was a lot of love and care at her deathbed, and it was quite an intense tension or paradox in some people's minds that I would be writing about the attempt to hold this person who birthed me and parented me in a comradely way as she died.
Hang on. Don't give it away. Don't give it away. No spoilers, okay? We're going to get to that. I specifically selected this interview because of this. Don't be patient.
While recognizing that she deserved a lot more than the family throughout her life, and that she was, in a way, quite care deprived, in a way that I certainly could not, reverse by loving her enough, no matter how much I tried, right? And understanding in a very deep way that
it's okay, I'm just teasing, it's fine.
If you love your family, you want family abolition, paradoxically.
Yeah, I think that's quite.
If you love your family, you want family abolition. What does that mean? What does Sophie mean when she says, I was to believe, based on conservatives, that all Abolish the Family people hated their family, but I just heard the Queen Abolish the Family communist herself say, if you love your family, you want to abolish it. So what does that mean? What does that mean? Why did she say that? If you love your family, you want to abolish it.
You want family abolition.
You want family abolition. If you love your family, you want family abolition. What does that mean? If you love your family, then you will free them from the oppressive force of capitalism. What else does it mean? It does not mean your family is tortured. That's not what she's saying. You want better for your family. This is what I'm saying when I say that socialists generally do believe they're doing the right thing. They believe that by abolishing the nuclear family, they will abolish capitalism, which will create a better world for everyone. This is what they believe, not what I believe. I'm explaining. And if everyone has a better world, then you've created a better situation for your family by abolishing it. That's what they mean. So that's what she's talking about here. You are liberating your family from oppression. Exactly. You are liberating your family by abolishing the family. Therefore, if you love your family, you will want family abolition, according to the communists.
If you love your family, you want family abolition, paradoxically.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what comes through quite a lot in the book, and this idea of love and the way in which we're conditioned to experience, expect, and see it through the family. I guess that kind of to follow on from the idea of this visceral reaction to it. It's almost, in order to kind of get to a point of saying, well, I'm a family abolitionist, one needs to kind of decolonize one's mind when it comes to love. And I think you kind of explore it a bit.
Decolonize your mind when it comes to love. What does that mean? In order to wrap your head around the idea of family abolition, you have to decolonize your mind when it comes to love.
Decolonize one's mind when it comes to love.
You have to kind of decolonize one's mind when it comes to love. What does that mean? What does decolonize mean? Let's start there. Has everyone heard the word decolonize before? What does the word decolonize mean? Yes. Cleanse your mind of capitalist brainwashing. When we're talking about decolonization, we're talking about removing the oppressive force of capitalism. Colonization is saying forcing capitalism onto whatever it happens to be, whether that is land or whether that's someone's brain. You have capitalist values. You see the world in a capitalist way. You have capitalist brainwashing. So when he says, in order to accept this, we have to decolonize our mind when it comes to love, it basically means you need to teach yourself to not want a monogamous marriage. You need to remove the idea of this propertied form of relationship that is the monogamous marriage and the monogamous family, because that is a capitalist idea to them. That is the idea of the colonizer. Does everyone understand?
And I think you kind of explore it a bit about this idea that love is the thing that we're supposed to be striving for. Love is where we're what we want. That's the you put it way more articulately than that. I'm gonna let everybody read it rather than just quote you. And that was kind of as I was kind of working through it, was I found myself kind of being challenged and challenging my own conception of love. And because for me, my socialism has always been it's for a small L love of humanity, as wet as that sounds. But it's this idea that everybody deserves love and deserves happiness and deserves care, but it sort of hadn't properly ever occurred to me that conception of love was in of itself infected by the kind of behemoth of capitalism. And I kind of maybe one of the most ugly segues that's ever existed. I want to go from that into the people that have kind of come before you. That began.
I missed a super chat. Sorry, I apologize. I didn't see this. Sorry, my bad. Die stick. Sorry, first time here, learning a lot, but I gotta say, I think your girlfriend has problems. Well, you know what? Listen. You will not besmirch my Sophie, okay? You won't do it. I won't have it. I won't stand for it. Sophie Lewis is the best internet relationship I've ever had. Sophie and I go way back. Sophie and I go back years. I do not allow people to besmirch her or to attack her unfairly. And you know what? Listen, Sophie's never betrayed me. I've had internet relationships with other people that ended in betrayal and internet blowups and nonsense. Sophie has never betrayed me. Okay, so she might have some crazy ideas, but I genuinely, I really do believe Sophie is like this close to the JQ. She's this close. I once watched a presentation with Sophie, and Sophie was like, in Germany, they were saying that the Jews were both the communists and the bankers. And Sophie was saying, how could it be that the Jews were both the communists and the bankers? And I was like, Sophie, they play both sides. She's like, she's this close. We are going to red pill Sophie Lewis on the JQ. It's only going to take me a couple more years of occasionally sliding into her DMs on Instagram to say, Sophie, have you thought about that conversation about the Jews? You really don't like Israel, Sophie. Have you thought about that presentation where you said the Jews were both the communists and the capitalists and you didn't understand that? Have you thought about that? We're this close. Okay. Don't besmirch my queen. Let me see another super chat from No Mayo. I love these questions because it helps me figure out better ways to answer more clearly and to be better understood. Part of the reason why I ask questions is people need to know how to explain this to other people. So one of my reasons for doing this stuff, guys, is what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create an army of people in you, everyone watching this, that I need you guys to be able to go out and explain this stuff to other people, because it can't just be me screaming on the internet. I am not the best teacher for everyone. I am an evil bitch sometimes. I yell at people. I offend conservatives. I'm not a Christian and I'm vocal about not being a Christian. I am not the best teacher for everyone. But if I can teach you guys what I know, and I can train you guys to go out into the world and to teach other people, then we have an army of teachers. And so if someone doesn't like me, that's fine. They can go to you. Okay. So that's what we're doing. That's why the pop quizzes work. That's why I want people to be participating, because you are all part of a grand plan to go out and teach people as much of this as possible. All right. I've been doing this for about 4 years, pretty consistently. I used to be a Democrat. I left the Democratic Party in 2019. I became a conservative media darling for leaving the left. I then told conservatives to fuck off because they're ridiculous people. I then basically became like, I was a libertarian for a while. I was hanging around with that. I then became a fascist because the libertarians suck too. The libertarians are never going to win. And so now I'm basically a far right fascist. And, you know, the socialists really love that. And so that's kind of like my abbreviated story. But like, I don't care what your politics are, to be perfectly clear. I don't care what your politics are. I don't care if you're a Christian or not. I don't care if you're Jewish. I don't care about any of these things. If you want to learn about the left, I will teach you about the left, and that's it.
This kind of journey of abolitionism. I wondered, because you kind of do a kind of potted history of family abolitionism. I wondered if you could maybe take us on a whirlwind tour of that, because I think it's actually really important to like recognize where these thoughts come from, and kind of how we've got to the place that we're in right now.
Thanks.
I'm an interstellar Arianist.
Well, a lot of people
listen, there's got to be a t-shirt in there somewhere. I'm going to make that. If you don't make that into a t-shirt, I'm going to make it into a t-shirt. That's actually really funny. Anyway.
Assume that I would start the potted history with Plato, because there's some stuff in Socrates' remarks about the just society that could be called family abolition. But since it's not about movement, I'm not really as interested in it.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of philosophy, bioethical scholars love to still talk about, sort of debate Plato's case for abolishing the family and I'm mentioning it partly because I suppose the useful element of it is just the really simple principle Socrates has, that it's unfair, which is a little sort of odd if you're convinced that nature makes it so.
Mm.
But he's talking about the lottery of a human infant being sort of thrown into a particular household that then happens to completely circumscribe that future person's class identity and fate, and that in a sense.
So what Sophie is saying here is if you're born into a household, you will be raised with the values of that household. And that could be really restrictive and that could be really oppressive. But if the community is responsible for raising the children, then the child gets all sorts of different influences across the community and access to all sorts of different resources that they wouldn't have if it wasn't for the nuclear family. So she's talking about like, this opens up so many possibilities for what we teach the children and yada, 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 yada.
We should take a more collective responsibility for the raising and nurturing of future humans. But as I said, I'm actually only interested in the people who were dreaming of ways to struggle together, which is a different history. And where I begin is the French utopian socialist Charles Fourier. It's a little bit of a pronunciation issue.
I think you nailed it. Do you like how I managed to work myself out of not having to say his name?
I was very impressed.
Thank you. Until I get paid the big bucks.
I'm gonna call him Charles.
Yeah, Charlie, I reckon.
Charlie.
Big
Charlie. Je suis. And he was, such an odd duck. Definitely had some extraordinary, scientific opinions about the almost ecological future that would be brought into being by abolishing bourgeois society. And the trope about utopia as somewhere where the rivers flow lemonade, that kind of comes from him, because he felt
when you hear Sophie say bourgeois society, she means capitalist society. Bourgeois is just another word for capitalist.
Felt that anyway, this is a bit of a sidebar.
Sidebar me. I need this in my life. I need to understand.
No, it's a wonderful element of his imagination, that the whole metaphysical, the biophysical world. Fourier felt that the biophysical world would be affected by the transformation of human social relations. So he had some sort of strange geoengineering ideas about sweet rivers and
that's some 4 a.m. at the afters shit.
It's amazing.
It's incredible.
He says that rather than sharks and lions, which are bad, there will be anti-sharks and anti-lions in the future. So this is a really silly way of convincing you that we should revisit this guy, but he is amazing. And contrary to mainstream culture's stories about feminism and lists of sort of history's important feminists, the two people that I begin with, Charles Fourier and Alexandre Kollontai, are not listed, despite the fact that the French utopian socialist was the guy who came up with the word feminism. He should be the original girl boss in a certain sense. And so should Kollontai, who was one of the first ever ambassadors for a nation state on the world stage. She was a family abolitionist, left Bolshevik. I mean, this is skipping 100 years. It just really amazes me that this consciousness has sort of been lost, that the original sort of I'm using this term girl bosses and now I'm committed to it. We're committed to the destruction of the private nuclear household and the dyadic parenting form. So Fourier is talking about this communalized way of living. I think he says it should be 1,200 people or so in a very specific architectural home with provision for some privacy, but also a lot of things carefully organized to be done together intergenerationally. It's all very anal. He has a plan and a timetable for the utopia of the future.
This man he's gone in. See, all I'm imagining right now is a warehouse in Manor House, but expanded out. One of those chaotic, the ones where you wake up in the morning and you're there and you're like, oh no. Oh, I've made an error.
Well, he would be right with you because queer.
Do I ever view them philosophically and assess their axioms or metaphysical assumptions? No. And I'm going to explain why. Because I don't care. I don't care. Do you know what I care about? I care what real socialists and real communists are doing in the real world. I care about what ideas they're pushing into schools. I care about what ideas they're pushing into society. I care about how they're trying to manipulate social values in order to inadvertently get people to go along with really bad ideas that are going to fuck everything up. So there are a lot of people that cover the history. There are a lot of people that cover the philosophy. There are a lot of people who talk about this Gnosticism bullshit and believe that James Lindsay is telling the truth when in fact James Lindsay is a fucking like idiot that made a lot of shit up and lied to a lot of people. If you want to go down and talk about Gnosticism and all this other stuff, you can go do that on the crazy side of the internet. But I don't do that here because literally the only thing I care about is what are these people doing in the real world right now? What language are these people using in the real world? What ideas are these people pushing in the real world? What are they teaching your kids? What are they teaching in colleges? What are they pushing through the media? What are they doing in regards to all of these different questions? Because if we don't start to get a handle on what these people are doing in the real world, they are going to win. And fundamentally, I think that conversations about what are the metaphysical beliefs that these people have, I don't give a fuck about their metaphysical beliefs. I care what they're actually doing. I care what their behaviors are. I care what their language is, because that is what is fucking everything up.
Orgies were very much part of his future society. And
I love this guy even more.
Oh.
The more and more I hear about him.
Speaking of polyamory, queer orgies are part of the future society.
Because queer orgies were very much part of his future society. And
I love this guy even more. The
yeah.
more and more I hear about him. Rivers of Lemonade, anti-sharks, queer orgies. Let's go. What are we still doing here?
And I think that's exactly the spirit to revisit these figures in, because it's certainly not the the program that you want to take and adopt, but it is, I think, the sensibility that everything could be different, and that, for example, children and women might deserve to be sort of busted out of the architecture of the private kitchen, for example. And a lot of people were inspired by him for a long time after he died. And there were lots of experiments with.
You just got, I think we're going to get another mention of this, but I just want to replay this. People want to be women and children. I need everyone to just put this in your back pocket, okay? Women and children need to be busted out of the idea of, let's say, the private kitchen. Just put that in your back pocket. We're going to come back to that later in the interview, but listen again.
Might deserve to be sort of busted out of the architecture of the private kitchen, for example. And a lot of people were inspired by him for a long time after he died. And there were lots of experiments with communes, and those imploded and went badly. And the history, let's be real, of experiments in communizing child rearing and moving beyond the coupled private nuclear household have often been messy, and you could argue just defeats, failures, and guess what, so have all attempts at overthrowing capitalism so far, which doesn't mean that it was a mistake to try or that it remained, we can, right, this is sure. No, but I think people are really keen to say, the kibbutz, massive failure, communes.
For people who don't know, kibbutzes in Israel are inherently communist. That's like what they are. They're communists. We watched a whole documentary about the kibbutzes one time. The kibbutzes are communist, and they didn't work. And I know everyone was shocked by that revelation, but yeah, if you support Israel, you're literally a communist. And if you don't support Israel, unironically, you're kind of a communist too. But
massive failure. Let's abandon any attempt to transform the terrain of our of our home lives, because that can only turn into totalitarian disaster. I think that's a wrong conclusion. And in any case, we don't actually have a choice but to transform our intimate lives, because capitalism is there as well. It will have to change. This is the scary thing about revolutionary transformation. It will automatically, but hopefully in a way that we can determine consciously together, change how we love. And Fourier was talking about bourgeois society's hypocrisies in a way that was very kind of inspirational to Marx and Engels. And then Kollontai, who talks about love as something that is infected with the germ of property. So she has this concept, property love, which is, I think, a really interesting and important understanding of how the love that we deserve as human beings is not fully available to us yet under conditions of capitalism, because we cannot help but view the objects of our love in a slightly proprietarian or possessive way.
Okay, we need to talk about this. You might wonder, why do socialists gravitate to polyamory? Polyamory being in a relationship with more than one person at the same time. Because socialists believe that because of capitalism and our minds that have been colonized by capitalism, we cannot fully grasp the joy of a relationship outside of a propertied monogamous relationship between two people. If you're in a relationship with two people, it's a propertied relationship. You are not fully experiencing the full expression of love if you are looking at your lover as a form of property that is exclusive to you and not available to everyone. This is like Brave New World stuff. This is like everyone belongs to everyone else in Brave New World. It's like orgy porgy in Brave New World. You guys understand this? They literally said that. Everyone belongs to everyone else in Brave New World. This is real life Brave New World. This is why I'm obsessed with socialism. They literally took what was in the dystopian novels and they're trying to do it in the real world. And it's fascinating. So let's just listen to this again. I want to thank you, Smiley, for the super chat. Appreciate it. Listen again.
Property love, which is, I think, a really interesting and important understanding of how the love that we deserve as human beings is not fully available to us yet under conditions of capitalism, because we cannot help but view the objects of our love in a slightly proprietarian or possessive way. And she says that in order to unleash the social force of a sort of red love, we will have to change materially some of the building blocks of our society to enable it to blossom. And so she thinks that includes a little bit like Fourier, the private kitchen should be not the default, but perhaps certain basic needs of human beings in a society should by default be met in the public sphere or the common sphere. Which is not to say that if you love cooking for your friends, you wouldn't be allowed to do that.
I was gonna say, how am I going to make my fancy gnocchi now, mate?
Are you good at making?
So essentially, this is the second time that Sophie has talked about the kitchen. And I have Sophie recorded from a different presentation where she was also talking about getting rid of the private kitchen as a form of abolishing the family. So I want to do a pop quiz for the chat. Sophie is telling us that they want to get rid of the private kitchen in your household as a mode of abolishing the family. Why would they want to do that? Why do you think? Why would we be getting rid of the private kitchen in order to abolish the nuclear family? Why is this something that they're talking about? Well, yeah, they do believe kitchens are oppressive, but how? How are kitchens oppressive? Because in the socialist society, there would be a communal kitchen. Because in a socialist society, they control the food. Is it so you would have to rely on them and people can't hoard food? That's part of it. Yeah, that's part of it. They want to bring everyone together in communized kitchens. That's exactly right. So in the other presentation that I have Sophie talking about this, did you guys know there are socialist architects? There are literally architects that are trying to, and you'll see this in a lot of Democrat cities. There are architects that are trying to figure out, how do we organize cities where we have these giant communal spaces where we can do communal things. One of the things that they want to do in the socialist utopia is, of course, they control the food supply. Oftentimes people ask me like, okay, Karlyn, they're not paying people in the socialist utopia, then why would people go to work? Well, you're going to go to work because if you don't go to work, you don't eat. They control the food supply. No more private stores with food. No more private farms. Remember, capitalism means private property ownership. If you get rid of private property ownership, you get rid of farms. They control the food supply. It's all public. It's all part of the collective. So then what do you do with the food supply? You serve the food supply up to the people who are working and getting their ration cards in the community kitchen. So if everyone is going to the community kitchen in order to get food and eating their food in the community cafeteria, then why would anyone need a private kitchen in their home? I mean, Sophie's saying, yeah, I guess you could have one maybe if you wanted to cook dinner for friends, but really they are envisioning a society in which everyone goes to the communal kitchen and the communal cafeteria in order to get their food rations 3 times a day and then eat with other members of the community. In regards to abolish the family, think about this. There's no more family dinner time. There's no family dinner time. There's no family breakfast time. There's no breakfast nook in the socialist utopia, because instead of eating with your family a couple times a day, you go down to the commune and you can eat with everyone. Everyone is your family. Does everyone understand why they want to do this? Does everyone get it? These people are literally thinking about, how do we architect every aspect of life in order to advance socialist ideas. North Star Esoteric, who is they who would control the food supply so it's not egalitarian? Great work, my mean areas professor. Okay, so you're being a smartass. I appreciate the super chat. I'm not I understand what you want me to say. In the socialist utopia, there's they do actually have ideas for who the deciders are. How is the decision-making process? I don't want to go deep into it today, but essentially what they believe is there are elected leaders to some sort of like council or something like that discuss and debate ideas. Ideas are always made in a democratic way so other people in the community can weigh in, but they don't have leaders like a top-down dictator. It's more like an elected position that changes every single year, where it's like someone is basically taking the lead on something. It's like the chair of a committee meeting or something. If you're the chair in a committee meeting, basically your job is to sit there and go, and you talk, and you talk, and you talk, and you talk. It's like a committee chair. So it's not that there's going to be a top-down dictator. It's that there are going to be people in decision-making positions that are put there for a temporary period of time and swapped out because they believe that all workers can do all things. And so like one worker is just as good as another worker and all this stuff. So it's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's kind of like an overview of what they actually believe. So the they is whoever is in charge of the community kitchen at that given time, who's ever in that position and the council that they have. That's who the they is. But that would change. It wouldn't be the same person forever. So let's keep going.
That includes a little bit like Fourier, the private kitchen should be not the default, but perhaps certain basic needs of human beings in a society should by default be met in the public sphere or the common sphere. Which is not to say that if you love cooking for your friends, you wouldn't be allowed to do
Yeah,
that
I was
in
gonna
your
say, how am I
private.
gonna make my fancy gnocchi now, mate?
Your gnocchi, are you good at making gnocchi?
I can't make it for shit, but I like to pretend I can. I buy it and then I just make it like fancy sauce. and
Yeah, I
everyone's
love
just like,
cooking for my friends.
cute. But I guess this is like part of, to kind of go back to that, the idea of the kind of love being infected by capital, being
Yeah.
infected by property, even on a really small scale right now in London, say, like rents are through the roof.
Yeah.
And I know, well, I was having a conversation with a mate the other day, and we were talking about the way in which specific kind of market conditions really impact our, like, the speed of our relationships and the tone and timbre of our relationships. I know so many people who've sort of like got together and then 3 months later are moving in, not because that's how that relationship would naturally have evolved, but simply because £1,000 for a room, you know, on the wages that most people in this city are earning, is simply, you can't do it. And so people are sort of forced.
Guys, one of the things I'm going to encourage you to stop doing is stop doing this owning the libs thing where you're like, I bet she has a kitchen in her home. They currently live under capitalism. They're allowed to have a kitchen in their home right now. They currently live under capitalism. They have to survive in the capitalist model. You guys look really ridiculous every single time you do these stupid, let me show you how the left is being hypocritical. They don't care. There is no debunk that you can ever do that is going to get these people to change their mind. There is no exposure of supposed hypocrisy, which usually is just like you not understanding what they believe. Like, there is no exposure of hypocrisy that you can do that's going to get them to change their mind. Do me a favor. Go to one of, when Sophie comes to like a bookstore near you, go to Sophie's talk and go, Sophie, do you have a communal kitchen in your home? And then sit there and watch what happens, because you're going to get laughed out of the room. This stuff doesn't work. They don't care. It changes nothing, and it just prevents you guys from actually engaging with what they believe. So please stop doing this. I understand, like, you're new here. I'm not trying to make you feel bad, but what I will tell you is, like, I normally don't allow this type of debunking in my chat because the entire chat becomes about debunking, and then no one learns anything and nothing gets done.
Into this. So yeah, I think, you know, to talk about love, to talk about relationships, to talk about any kind of human interaction, it necessitates the introduction of an.
Are you under some sort of retard impression that we're watching liberals here? Are you actually stupid? Do you not know the difference between liberals and socialists and communists? Do you think that we're watching Democrats? Do you believe that these people are funded by George Soros? Are you actually this fucking stupid? We are not watching liberals right now, and I don't give a flying fuck about liberals. And if you give a flying fuck about liberals, you have completely misjudged the severity of the problem that you have to deal with. Democrats and communists are not the same thing. Liberals and communists are not the same thing. Every single time one of you retards goes out and you think you're getting one over on the libs and you're high-fiving because you just got a really good debunk in, bro, they're fucking laughing at you anyway. Every single fucking time you guys go out and you call these people liberals or progressives or Democrats, you are running cover for the real far left, and you are allowing them to win because you don't even know the difference between the groups. So again, I've already told you once, sit down, shut the fuck up, listen to what's being said, ask questions, stop assuming you know anything, because every single chat that you've sent in today has shown me pretty clearly you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Thank you, North Star Esoteric. Where can we go find a way? Where can we go to find your way of politically opposing queer Marxism? Sorry, new here. Okay. The very best thing you can do right now is to learn as much as you can about what these people believe. The very first step is to learn as much as you can about what they actually think, unlearn all of the bullshit that conservatives have taught you, start to understand your enemy. If you want an introduction to queer Marxism, I will be uploading. So I did a stream on Monday that is an introduction to queer Marxism. I'll be uploading it to my Substack. I will be uploading it to my YouTube channel. But if you want a good general introduction, what you want to do is go over to my Substack. That's Karlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. Go to How to Speak Socialist and go to this presentation right here. And this is the re-education presentation. This is a free 90-minute presentation, so people can go to that. People, you can also go, if you want the full one, you can go to the How to Speak Socialist 4-hour presentation, and that is all available for free over on my Substack, and those will help you out. But really, the very first thing you got to do is you really do just have to sit down and learn. It takes a while to learn this stuff when you first get started. We're talking months here. We're not talking weeks. We are talking months. It is a commitment. Basically, I'm teaching you how to speak a new language. And so that is what you have to do. And obviously, I have to go back and, I'm talking to a communist refugee. Okay. Hey, Bunker, please define capitalism for us as the left would define capitalism. Go. You're a communist refugee? How does the left define capitalism? Explain it to us in the chat right now. Go. If you say anything else in the chat, you're going to get permanently banned. Answer the question. How does the left define capitalism? You know so much because you're a communist refugee, but you think that liberals and communists are the same fucking thing. Tell us how the left defines capitalism. Go. This is what we have to do, guys, when we get retards on my channel. Because the thing of it is, so many people on the right think they know everything about communism when in fact they don't know basic 101 level information. And I'm going to demonstrate. There is no way in fuck off hell this guy is going to know how the left defines capitalism. We're waiting for your answer, Bunker Dome. How does the left define capitalism? You have 30 seconds to answer. You're so smart, you're a communist refugee. How does the left define capitalism? If you don't answer in 30 seconds or say that you don't know, you will be permanently banned from my chat. We're waiting. It's not hard. It's 3 fucking words. You don't need... Are you chat GPTing right now because you don't know the fucking answer because you're a liar? We're waiting. You have 15 seconds to answer. I'm permanently banning you from the chat. Any communist refugee should be able to answer this question if you actually are a communist refugee. We're waiting. Oh, look at that! He doesn't know the answer! He doesn't know the answer. Chat, please tell our faker here that doesn't know shit about shit, that thinks he knows everything. Please tell this person what the left's definition of capitalism is. Go. I don't give a fuck where you're from. I give a fuck that you don't know what the fuck you're talking about and you seem to be refusing to listen. So now we're going to teach you. And what's going to happen, Bunker, is you're going to go in a 24-hour timeout now because I'm sick of hearing you talk. I don't want to hear you talk anymore. And so you're going to go in a 24-hour timeout and you can come back tomorrow and prove to us how much you still haven't learned. Hang on. In the meantime, I see a lot of people in the chat chatting in saying that capitalism is defined as private property ownership. That is the answer to the question. That is the only answer to the question. And now that I know that my chat is way smarter than the supposed communist refugee from Croatia, we can continue.
Analysis of capital, right?
Yeah.
An analysis of capitalism, of the way in which it has infected everything. So, which I guess is the premise of the idea that one needs to abolish.
Yeah.
And I kind of wanted.
We're way beyond generalized terms for those on the left. We need to identify threats based on severity. Well, no, the first thing you need to do is learn their language because you guys, again, here's the problem. And again, for most people, this is not your fault. It is the fault of the influencers and the pundits who never told you this information. But it's not your fault. I'm not trying to make everyone feel bad. But the biggest problem that we are dealing with right now when it comes to actually being effective against the left is that the right has no clue what's going on. The right doesn't know what the left believes. The right doesn't know how the left is organized. The right doesn't know what the left is doing. The right has no concept for any of this. The right doesn't know what ideas they're pushing in schools. The right doesn't know what ideas are actually the most severe and dangerous ideas that are being pushed on the left. The right has no fucking clue. The reason that the right has no clue is because their influencers and their pundits and their commentators and their politicians lie to them all the time. So the very first thing that we need to do, when I keep telling people, you guys ask me, what can we do about this? The very first thing that needs to happen is that we need to teach as many people as possible what is actually going on the left. Because right now, the right is fighting some mythical monster that they've made up. They're looking over here, they're going, Trantifa! Trantifa isn't a real thing. Trantifa is not real. It is a mystical thing. It is like a unicorn. The real monster is over here. This is what the left is doing. The right is constantly looking over here and screaming and reeing at problems that they've literally made up. The real problem is over here. We need to take people from being over here and screaming at the fucking sky like they're an old man that's fucking senile, and we need to focus them in on what is the actual problem. These are the groups that we need to be paying attention to. That's what we're doing here. And so when I give you guys the answer that no one likes to hear, which is you've got to learn as much as possible, I really do mean you need to sit down and understand you don't know as much as you think you do. And every single person that's ever interacted with my content has gone through the same thing. I went through the same thing live on the internet. I was a leftist for 20 fucking years. I thought I understood the left. I had no fucking idea. How I learned about the left is doing exactly what we're doing now, which is watching a ton of their content, breaking down the language, dissecting the language, trying to figure it out. And I did this for 4 years, almost every single day of my life. I've been doing this since actually 4.5 years. I've been doing this since early 2021, guys. So I don't want anyone to feel bad if you're finding out this information and you're saying, holy shit, I didn't know. This is crazy. That's common. That's very common with people who come to my content. And that's part of the process. And I know that everyone wants to jump in and just start doing things. But if you don't know the enemy that you're fighting, if you don't know that the target is over here and not over here, you're going to keep fighting the wrong thing. You're going to keep doing the wrong things. You've got to hone in on the target and really understand the target. No, bro, shut the fuck up. They know exactly what they believe in. They know exactly what they believe. The left is incredibly consistent. You will find this when you actually sit down and watch their content. The left is incredibly consistent. They are consistent across groups. They are consistent across decades. The core ideas, they have disagreements here and there, but it's more about how they're operationalizing. The disagreements are not in the core of what they believe. They are incredibly consistent. And if you think that the left is not consistent, it's because you're listening to bullshit con artist influencers that are lying to you. So, sit down, listen, get comfortable, get a snack, smoke a bowl, have a beer, whatever you need to do, but sit down and listen and learn and ask questions. And it just takes time, guys. It really does. For those of you who are feeling overwhelmed, it just takes time. You are learning a new language. You cannot learn a new language overnight. No, I would not call reformers useful idiots. They know exactly what they're doing. They just have different ideas about how to do it. Anyway, let's get back to the presentation. I need everyone to focus. We're going back to Sophie.
To talk a bit about that idea of abolition and the utility of it in this kind of.
The way you're going to learn what they're saying is to listen to them. This is what I'm trying to tell you. You will learn by watching them. I will break it down. We will explain it. If you have questions about what they're saying, if you don't understand it, ask people. Ask the chat. Ask me. Like, part of this is to answer your questions. So I understand it might be confusing, but if you find yourself confused, ask a question and we'll try to answer it. But you will learn from osmosis. The very best way to learn a foreign language, okay. If I wanted to learn how to speak French and I didn't speak any French, one of the most effective ways I could learn to speak French is to go live in France for 6 months. Now, when I arrive in France, I'm not going to speak any French and it's all going to sound like gobbledygook and I'm going to have no fucking idea what's going on. But by the end of that 6 months, because I've lived in France and I've learned from osmosis in France, I'm going to speak French fluently by the end of that 6 months. We're doing exactly the same thing. You are learning how to speak their language by immersing yourself in their environment. You're not going to understand it at first, but we're going to break it down. We're going to help you along. This is like a language class. So just sit tight, just listen. It's going to be fine. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, there's so much more. Oh, you guys have no idea.
Frame, because there's a really good bit in it, because I was reading it and I was like, yep, agree. yep, agree. And then and I was like, but do we need abolition? Should we expand? And then I got to that chapter and you literally said that, and I was like, we are one mind. It's so true. But what I really liked about it was that you sort of, you kind of detailed the arguments about the idea of expanding the family rather than abolishing it, changing it, evolving it. And also, I think quite rarely in these sort of texts, you said you were kind of compelled by them. They convinced you to a certain extent, and then went and kind of like knocked them down afterwards. But I guess that sort of, for me, as I was reading it, as I was thinking more about abolition, and towards the end, you sort of talk about this. We're in this sort of great period of abolition. We've seen discussion around the abolition of the police, discussion of the abolition of borders, of border forces. That's quite an easy, in some ways, an easy.
No. This is another bullshit talking point that you guys got to stop saying this. The left wants to eliminate all accountability because it's unfair. No. The left has more accountability in their culture than conservatives have in theirs. I promise you. You're telling me they want to eliminate all accountability? If in their society, if you don't work, you don't eat. How's that for fucking accountability? In their society, if you don't go along with what the community wants, you go to re-education camp. How's that for accountability? In their society, if you don't follow their rules and are a good comrade, you get excommunicated. How's that for accountability? You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Shut the fuck up, sit down, open your ears, listen, and actually learn something.
Thing to think, because the police, they're bad vibes. We don't want them. You know what I mean? Like they don't have a good energy. We're not getting anything from them apart from shit. And so it's quite easy to make that argument. Borders, slightly more complex, but also quite easy to be like, actually, do you know what? Yarswood doesn't seem great, does it? And most people will be like, yeah, you know what? Locking people up indefinitely, not on board with that. Whereas with the family, it's so entwined with love.
Yeah.
And love that people feel and, treasure. And, it becomes part of the core of who they are. And often how they sort of go on to do things in the world, it becomes their foundation. So I wondered if we could talk a bit about like how we I said decolonize before, but yeah, kind of decolonize our minds from that and get to this sort of abolish the family position. Big question. Just
no, it's a
one word answer.
Gosh, so you're exactly right that it is shocking, to compare prisons and the family. I'm certainly not saying that they're equivalent structures. Or I also am, really insistent though that what I've learned from the abolitionists who come up through the sort of prison industrial complex, anti-police, critical race theory, that abolitionist tradition that you're talking about, how they actually again and again explain that if we did burn down all the prisons today, certainly it would be a good thing, but it would not be abolition. It'd
be fucking chaos is what it would be. My kind of chaos, let's do it, but maybe not like a fertile ground for a fruitful utopia.
Yeah. Abolish.
Okay, I'm not going to keep interrupting but I do have a lot to say. I just want to pipe in to note that I want people to understand that the left believes that abolition of the nuclear family is connected to abolition of borders, is connected to abolition of prisons. That's because the nuclear family, borders, and prisons are all manifestations of capitalism. The core of every issue on the left is capitalism. Capitalism upholds the nuclear family and is reproduced in the nuclear family. Borders are a form of capitalism. It's managing private property. It's excluding people from use of property. That is a form of capitalism. And the police are the managers of capitalism. So these are all just three different ways of attacking capitalism and the capitalist ecosystem.
If you really want to nerd out about it, is a concept that in everyday language, tends to be used to mean destroy. But I, you know, and I appreciate that. That's why, you know, writing a book with a cover that says abolish the family is taken as provocative when that's actually genuinely not the intention. If I thought that there was a good alternative, I would say something less hurtful. I'm not.
On this channel, I cover the radical revolutionary far left in America. We also do cover the reformist socialist in America. If you go to my website, Decode the Left, maybe someone can put the link in the chat. Go to decodetheleft.com/map. I have a framework to understand the modern left from Democrats to socialists. Basically, the 5 different types of leftists. You've got Democrats, liberals, progressives, democratic socialists, and revolutionary socialists. That's the main 5 groups on the left right now. I don't cover the Democrats because they're fucking boring. I don't cover the liberals because they're fucking boring. I sometimes cover the progressives because I have to, because they're involved in protest organizing and stuff like that. I sometimes cover the DSA because I have to. It's the most effective socialist election engineering organization in the United States right now, and they are really effective. But my true love is the radical revolutionary far left. These are the people who want to overthrow the government. That's who Sophie is. That's what we're covering right now. But if you go to, thank you, Reagan, decodetheleft.com/map, you will get a layout of like, here are the 5 groups on the left. And again, we focus primarily on the democratic socialists and the revolutionary socialists. Occasionally we go outside of that, but not too often.
Actually getting kicks out of upsetting people, but there is, I think, something necessary about using this framework, because abolition is the concept we have for a simultaneous destruction, preservation, and sort of transformation of something, a realization of its promise. That's the beautiful thing that I take from the concept. So, and you're like, hang on, what are you realizing about prisons when you abolish prison? And what it is the promise of justice, which the prison industrial complex and the criminal justice system is a travesty of. This is how, you know, the people who theorize about this dialectic, I think, teach the process of abolition. You have this infrastructure that says, we will keep you safe. And what it is actually doing.
Hey, got another super chat from Smiley, watching from Southern California, appreciating your stream. CQR with HT2. Yeah, I appreciate the Christian question spaces. I appreciate HT. I don't think HT appreciates me though. I don't think HT. I'm starting to get a fucking complex about this. I don't think HT likes me, and it's really upsetting and it's really bad because he always has a comment. He always has something to say, and it makes me upset because I actually do like him and I really like those spaces. So I don't know what I did to piss him off, but I think I did something to piss him off, and I feel like I haven't been anything but nice to him, and it's really unfair. But thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it.
In colonial white supremacist capitalism is
she just said colonial white supremacist capitalism. Listen,
we will keep you safe. And what it is actually doing in colonial white supremacist capitalism is very far from that, isn't it? It's murdering people, it's segregating people, it's infecting our imaginations with a sort of carceral attitude that shores up private property, etc., etc. I can't distill what the prison industrial complex does in the present, but it's not justice. And what
listen, I'm being rather facetious about HT. I don't want anyone to think I don't like him or that there's a war going on. I'm being kind of facetious. I'm just joking around.
Abolition does is not burn down the prisons exactly, although it does maybe also do that, but it builds the world that would make prisons a sick joke, a distant memory, that would make it a travesty in everyone's minds of the ideal of justice, like an unthinkable institution. That's the extent of abolition. It's no more and no less, Ruthie Wilson Gilmore says, than the changing of everything. Everything has to change. One thing, which is everything, which is the bad news.
Tricky. Just a little thing then,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so with family, I do think it's important to actually use the same word, because you're looking at this almost utopian ideal or aspiration that people have in connection with family, which is
No, they do not believe this. I know exactly where this is coming from. No, they do not believe that capitalism is a uniquely white European invention. No. That's not why they call whiteness capitalism. They call whiteness capitalism because they say, and I have them on video saying this, that whiteness meant people who do not work in the sun. It was a reference to the ownership class, and that just happened to be the ownership class in the United States, which is where the term was invented. So no, they do not believe. They believe capitalism started in ancient Sumeria, bro. Was ancient Sumeria white and European? No, they literally believe that capitalism started in ancient fucking Sumeria. We'll talk about anti-civilization communists another day. Well, there is a history there, and there is a history there. There is a history there. Anyway, we're not talking about that right now.
Is to be held almost unconditionally, to be known, to be loved, to really be there for one another in a way that is free from the market and from the state. That's what we hope family is. I think on some level, more people than you would think know that it's not quite the case. That actually there is politics, for want of a better word, and the economy up in your business, in your private.
Truly,
yeah,
truly all up there.
You know,
just
which but my potted history didn't get very far because I'm always
Sorry, that was my bad as well.
It's not your
here's
bad.
Another thing I thought.
Do you remember when the Los Angeles Times called Larry Elder the blackface of white supremacy? Do you remember in the BLM riots when black-owned businesses in Minneapolis sustained billions of dollars of property damage? So they do not like blacks being owners. They don't like, but they think that black people are rightfully proletarian, oppressed workers and stuff like that. So when black people become part of the capitalist or the bourgeois, like Larry Elder, like black business owners in Minneapolis during the BLM riots, they don't like that and they try to destroy all their shit. Why would Larry Elder be considered the black face of white supremacy? Because he's a capitalist, because he's part of the bourgeois, because he's part of the elite. And listen, again, I will do another episode. I promise you, I will do an episode on the whole whiteness means capitalism thing. I will explain it. I will show you guys evidence. I will show you what they say in their books. I wrote a whole book about this called A Brief History of Racism. I promise we will tackle this topic another day, and I'll lay it out for you guys. And listen, this is not to say that I think that people who talk about skin color and race, it's not to say that I don't think you guys have legitimate grievances about white genocide and white erasure. I'm just saying it's a different problem. So I'm suggesting that your complaints about white genocide, white erasure, all that stuff, those are valid complaints. It's just separate from what the left is doing. These are two distinct problems. And there can be overlap between those problems, and that overlap typically comes in the form of Jews. Okay, but we need to just put this aside for right now and talk about it another day. And I'm not trying to make you think that I don't understand the grievances you guys have, because I do understand the grievances. It's just not the same thing.
Well, no, but it would take me hours, wouldn't it? I can't summarize. But I guess
there's a whole book on it. So.
Well, it's very short, which is one thing people love. But to sort of skip another 50 years from Kollontai, I guess, just to link in with what I'm saying here, the really epochal contribution of women's liberationists in the 60s and early 70s was to insist, to really hammer home on this point, that the home is not actually, although we all want it to be, a true sanctuary from the domination of the market and of the state. And so the the unorthodox Marxists of the Wages for Housework International Committee, and who summarized their position. Silvia Federici summarized the position as actually wages against housework. Nobody thinks that you could get wages for housework. Making that demand was an impossible.
I'm working on building this on my website right now, so that it's going to take a minute to build this, but I'm working on building different pages on my website that are all the different definitions of things with all the different evidence. So just give me a minute though. Okay. I'm one person.
Declaration of war. It was a almost like a way of exploding the totality that they were saying exists between the factory and the social factory. They were saying that when Marxists rightly point to this hidden abode of production, where you have Marx kind of like drawing the curtain back to show you what actually goes on in the production of value, and it's this horrible thing where capital meets labor in the formal workplace. But then what this incredible moment for me, the way I see it in the early 70s, is that these women are saying there's another hidden abode behind this hidden abode. It's a hiddener abode. It's the hiddenist. The hiddenist, which is the family. Mm-hmm. And that's where it really gets difficult to think about the abolition of work, for example, as the supreme value in our society, which I do insist with, for instance, the wages for housework sort of autonomous tradition is the goal of proletarian struggle. It's not to make the workers be on top.
Bro, Sophie wants to abolish capitalism. Sophie believes in order to abolish capitalism, she needs to abolish the nuclear family as a system. So yes, she wants to abolish everyone's family. Everyone's. She believes she needs to in order to abolish capitalism. The left doesn't think about individualism, guys. The left is a collectivist unit.
One day.
We all do like being on top every now and again, though.
Now and again.
Yeah.
But it's about
it's about workers being pillow queens forever.
it's about workers having abolished themselves as workers, Ben.
Sure. Yeah. A much more sensible salient point.
but and I think the challenge that we have to rise to is this insight that work and the family are one, mm-hmm. And that you actually can't really have one without the other. So in my book, I think I say my definition of the family is almost the family is the reason we want to go to work. It's the reason we have to go to work, and it's the reason we can go to work. Mm-hmm. And if you think about it like that,
there is also a whole abolish work movement on the left. We'll talk about it another day. I just want you guys to know that is actually a thing.
I think it really clarifies why it makes sense to talk in these slightly totalizing terms about the family, rather than constantly insisting I only mean the white family, I only mean the bourgeois family. The family is bourgeois in
So listen to what Sophie just said. She's saying they think I only mean the white family, the bourgeois family. What Sophie means by that is that whiteness means capitalism. We know that. They mean the family, the propertied class. Bourgeois also means capitalism, the propertied class. Sophie speaks in very flowery language. So oftentimes when Sophie is saying words in the same kind of breath, she's putting them together. She's just saying them in a different way. The white family, the bourgeois family, it's the same thing. She's referring to the same concept. So I'm giving you guys an example of this is when you hear them talking about whiteness meaning capitalism, because she's not saying white is in skin color. She's saying white is in bourgeois. So listen again. And then she's flat out calls it like the capitalist family, I think.
It makes sense to talk in these slightly totalizing terms about the family, rather than you know, constantly insisting, I only mean the white family, I only mean the bourgeois family. The family is bourgeois in this society, because it privatizes care. You kind of get to why it doesn't make sense to almost like exclude the very people that are closest to abolishing the family from family abolition by saying, oh, your families are great.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? It's sort of like, you know, we say queer family, we say, you know, very rightly, there's a huge tradition of insisting, and I hope I do a lot of that too, on the resistant power of Black families against the state in the United States, for example, or you know, indigenous families against the colonial state.
I swear, I almost have Sophie on video talking about. Okay, I'm just gonna say it. Sophie believes. How do I fucking say this? Sophie believes that Black families are not nuclear families because most of the time the father is not in the household. So remember, when they're talking about the family, they're talking about the monogamous relationship, the propertied relationship of marriage, and the production of children within the capitalist model. I actually do have Sophie on video getting very, very close to saying that Black families are not nuclear families because the father is never in the home. I swear to God. And therefore, it's not a monogamous nuclear family and not a monogamous relationship because the father is not there. So it's a different. This is why Black families are not considered to be part of this overall abolish the family model, because they don't adhere to the capitalist nuclear family model because the fathers aren't there. I swear to God. I'm explaining what Sophie believes. This is not what I have to go back and find that. I swear I have that on video, though.
Families against the state in the United States, for example, or you know, indigenous families against the colonial state, and so on and so forth. It's really intense to say family abolition in a context where you know, Palestinian families are essentially under fire, right? Being torn apart, or migrant families at the border. But it sounds like a horrible thing to say, but it's actually the important politics that we need in these exact points of violent intensity. Because if we cannot see beyond the valorization of family when we defend migrants who are being torn apart, for example, at the border, ultimately, I think we stay within the logic of a certain kind of respectability where people get admitted into the wages of familism, which, as we know, is not working. That would be our horizon, right? And I'm not saying we shouldn't do this. I'm not saying that people shouldn't protest or demonstrate or riot in the name of stopping family separations. In the United States where I live, we are anyone with, you know, half an ounce of decency is obviously demonstrating to stop family separations, right? And
I wonder if we can get Sophie deported. Now, I'm not saying I want to get Sophie deported. So Sophie is not American. Sophie's from Austria, but Sophie lives in Philadelphia. Sophie has been very vocal, like pro-Palestine, anti-Israel. And of course, listen, I actually agree with Sophie on the Israel point. I just kind of I don't want to get Sophie deported, but I just wonder if we could. I'm just wondering if we can make that happen. We just got a faculty member fired at Texas State University. So why couldn't we get Sophie deported? Why couldn't we? So, honest question. No police, no jail, no families, no oppression. Do they have a plan for dealing with crime? They believe that most crime will be abolished when capitalism is abolished, because they believe that capitalism creates the vast majority of crime. And while they acknowledge on some level that there would still be crime after capitalism, they think the amount of crime will be greatly reduced and much more manageable. So we won't need the police, we won't need prisons, there'll be different ways of dealing with it and like all that stuff. So yeah, they think that all that's going to go away, basically.
I'm not saying that's that's wrong. I'm saying it's right. But the sensibility we need to have, I think, is that ultimately our horizon is not family reunification, which, by the way, sometimes doesn't work out very well for example, a queer child who is forcibly reunited with some biological or legal relatives that they will be perhaps even murdered by, right? You don't want to be forcibly reuniting family either. But can we not have enough subtlety to understand that we can work to take the boot off the neck of racialized, colonized families, proletarianized families, you know, single working class moms and the rest of it, while also insisting that we deserve better than family as the technology for meeting all of our needs. So that's a bit of a long answer, but when you think about family as the privatization of care, that's what it is. It's the form that capitalism's privatization of care takes. Then you
the family is the form of that capitalism's privatization of care takes. So this is what I was explaining earlier, where capitalism is defined as private property ownership. One of the reasons they want to abolish the family is because they believe that the family unit restricts the people within the family to the care that is available to their family based on their resources and stuff like that. So she just said it. Listen again.
As the privatization of care.
Hang on, I'm going to go back a little bit more.
Answer.
The family is the privatization of care.
But when you think about family as the privatization of care, that's what it is. It's the form that capitalism's privatization of care takes.
There it is.
Then you sort of start to see that none of us, you know, no matter how creative we are with our kinship, and I'm not against you know, all the things I sort of mentioned about like creative, queer, you know, non-white forms of doing family. You know, that's not sort of something I dismiss or think isn't part of the horizon. But you ultimately wouldn't say expand when you're understanding what you're talking about as an organized scarcity, like an organized form of austerity. You don't expand that, you abolish it, right?
I guess part of the maybe the issue, the problem, the kind of contention here or contradiction maybe is that maybe it's best sort of talked about in intermediary demands and revolutionary demands, right? Because, for example, the right to family life is enshrined within the European Convention on Human Rights. It's something that is utilized you know, often by people fighting the sharpest edges of the hostile environment here in the UK, for example, as a way of trying to circumnavigate.
Are all of the layers of the left essential for revolution in their opinion, or do they feel the Democrats and liberals get in their way? Bro, these people hate the Democrats. They hate the liberals. They shit talk the Democrats and the liberals like literally all the time. They shit talk the Democrats and the liberals far more than they should talk conservatives. They think about how much the Democrats and the liberals suck like every single day. They hate them. They don't want to work for them. They want them to go away. They're working very hard on trying to radicalize as many people away from the Democratic Party because the Democrats suck so much, and they hate them way more than they hate the right. They think about how to defeat them way more than they think about defeating the right. They are not intimidated by the right at all, like in any way. They almost never talk about it, which I know sounds weird because the right talks about these people all the time. These people almost never talk about the right. Their vitriol is almost exclusive for the Democrats and what they call the neoliberals.
The worst excesses of this government's fascistic border policies. And so we, as people that believe that they shouldn't exist, kind of have to bolster that.
No, Pete. No, it's not only partially true. It's completely true. And you're still very new here and there's still a lot you don't know. So please don't. It's not partially true. It is completely true.
But the flip side of that is that it means that there becomes this narrative about single men.
Yeah.
And they're kind of deserving the undeserving. If we're going to look at it specifically through kind of like migrant rights lens, and that in of itself is deeply problematic and difficult, and kind of propagates this deserving haves and have-nots, and that to me very much sits within the lens of this kind of overarching family narrative. And it's sort of how do you, and it's probably it's a question almost without answer, because how do you fight for these things that you need to unpick?
Hey, thanks, Alex, for the super chat. Glad Nick shouted out your channel last night. Good find. Yeah, I love and adore Nick Fuentes. Listen, I'm not a Christian, and we don't agree on that, but that's fine. I don't care that you guys are Christians. It makes no difference to me at all. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate groypers. As long as you guys aren't mucking up my replies on Twitter, I appreciate you. And of course, I appreciate Nick. I support him. I think it's awesome. All the attention he's getting, and yeah.
Without fucking everybody essentially that's needs them. And I guess the kind of the other contention or contradiction to a certain extent is you write about it as the family as this sort of shield, as this place of sanctuary, kind of small s sanctuary, I guess, in this sense of queer families that kind of come together. And you speak a lot about Black families in America and kind of maroon communities and throwing off colonizers and stuff, and I think it's a really kind of difficult terrain, right, to kind of maneuver yourself through, to give, as you sort of said, to give the space and the recognition of these collections of people as potential sort of incubators of revolutionary thought, practice, acts, whilst also saying, actually, we do need to get rid of that. It's sort of being like, we love what's growing in the Petri dish, but the Petri dish is actually going to have to go on the fire as well. And people are a bit like, I quite like that. That is my favorite Petri dish. So can you not burn it?
It's a complicated one, isn't it? Because the word family, as you're kind of saying, is the word that people on the margins use for what they're experimentally creating and sustaining and remaking fresh every day, which in a certain sense is very contradictory to the proprietarian institution of family. And so we have language as an imaginative limit or tension here, and there is the fact that these families are often not families in the sense of being sacred in the eyes of the state. So this is a sociological and sort of Black feminist point that has been made for a very long time, that to put it in the most polemical way that exists in that tradition of scholarship, the Black family is an oxymoron in the sense that the state can always penetrate its boundaries. The whole thing about a family, in the sense that the critical.
So okay. So Sophie's kind of getting this is not the racist comment that I made earlier about Sophie saying that Black families can't be nuclear families because they don't have fathers. So what Sophie is saying is the Black family is not a nuclear family because there is essentially what she's saying is people can be taken away from the Black family at any moment. The police, the racist police, will come in and arrest the father and wrongfully sent into prison and all that stuff. So they're saying the state can come in and take the kids away, stuff like that. So they're saying Sophie's contention is that because of systemic racism, that the state is more likely to oppress Black families than white families. And so that's part of the whole, like, you know, aspect of this. But also keep in mind that Larry Elder's family would be considered white. If the Black family had money, the Black family would be considered white. So I know I'm using the terms white and Black so that it might be confusing to people. When she's saying Black family, she means poor. She's essentially saying all Black people are poor and don't have property. But if the family was a wealthy family, they wouldn't be considered a Black family. They'd be considered a white family. Yeah, she's talking about capitalist violence. That's exactly right.
That the state can always penetrate its boundaries. The whole
Hang on.
thing about a family.
I'm going to go back a little bit further. Hang on.
These families are often not families in the sense of being sacred in the eyes of the state. Like, so this is a sociological and sort of Black feminist point that has been made for a very long time, that to put it in the most polemical way that exists in that tradition of scholarship, the Black family is an oxymoron in the sense that the state can always penetrate its boundaries. The whole thing about a family, in the sense that you know, the critical tradition I'm operating within talks about it, is that the police cannot simply barge inside it. That's the concept, because that's the contract with the state. You know, and it has a very sort of interesting valence.
Yeah. Well, this is exactly right. And it's the same with the Italians. So the Irish and the Italians. So it's actually funny. I mean, is Mizakan here? Mizakan has a really good way of explaining this. The Irish were not always considered white. The Italians were not always considered white. They were assimilated to whiteness at some point. And Mizakan has a whole passage in a book about this. I have to go back and find it. But essentially, yes, this is absolutely true, because Mizakan's not here. Damn, we'll have to get him to talk about this another day. But there was a time when Irish and Italians were not considered to be white. They were assimilated to whiteness in order. It had something to do with like them having access to white privilege. So I guess probably as like Italian and Irish assimilated to like American values, they assimilated to whiteness, which gave them access to white privilege, which is why they're considered to be white today. It's something along the lines of that, but there is a book quote that we'll find at some point where they do explain this explicitly.
Its roots in sort of property law, or there's almost a Renaissance era legal principle that is about a man's house is his castle, and then settler colonists sort of adopt this in North America. If you think about the imaginary of the man with a gun who's
Listen, I am not choosing between Nick and Adam. I am not choosing. I adore Adam Green. I really, on a personal level, and I love his work, and I agree with Adam Green, and you know that. I also adore Nick, and you will not make me choose. You will not do this to me. I know that you guys have issues with Nick. See, now I'm talking to the CQ space. See, I have both Groypers and the Christian question people here. And so, listen, I'm on both sides. I'm not fucking choosing. Don't you fucking make me choose. I can like both of you. I like you both for different reasons, okay?
Who's sort of, don't tread on me, come into my land, my property, and I will shoot you, and I can't wait actually for you to try. You know, that whole imaginary is, I think, pretty part and parcel of the family. Like, people are always saying, aren't they, kind of, you know, apropos nothing, they will say, you know, I would kill for anyone comes for my kids. I will
Yeah.
You know, you have really, you know, liberal feminists will write texts about, you know, feminism in general, and then suddenly the topic of children will come up, and they'll say, you know, I've got a child. If anyone ever tried to hurt her, I might kill them. And you're like, what? Who? Like.
See, just for the record, it's this type of shit that would actually make me choose Nick. It's like, you like Nick Fuentes, I'm taking my toys and going home. I learned, you haven't learned even half of what you think you know. I promise you. He's probably already gone, and that's fine. But he's like, I learned everything I need to know about queer Marxism, and I found out you like Nick Fuentes, and I'm taking my toys and going home. What a conservative, like, bullshit cop-out. This is what conservatives do all the time. Is like, the minute conservatives hear something from me they don't like, they're like, ew, I don't need to do this anymore. I'm taking my toys and going home. It's so fucking annoying. This is what will make me choose Nick Fuentes over the CQ spaces. I'll tell you that. It's like, yeah, bro, you barely know anything. You don't know shit about shit. Shut up. But I still adore Adam Green. I'm not betraying Adam Green over a guy in my chat, but I'm just saying.
There is something about the proprietary, like who said that? Where did this come from? People are really convinced that children as property is
children as property, you say, Sophie. Children as property. It's almost like socialists believe that children and parental rights are private property.
Proprietary, like who said that? Where did this come from? People are really convinced that children as property is the area where all violence is justified in its defense, in defense of private property and defense of one's own children. And so in that sense, there's something quite different going on when people say that what they're building is family, when in fact they're not benefiting in the legal sense from that status.
So there was an interesting...
I'm going to show you guys another video by Sophie real quick. It's a super quick video. Let me get this to be explicit for you guys. Let me show you explicitly what Sophie Lewis believes about children and private property and parental rights. We're going over to my Substack. I'm going to the video vault. It's going to be close to the top because I don't think I've updated it. Well, maybe it's not close to the top. Hang on. Let's see. How long is it going to take me to find this video? How long is it going to take me to find this video? Okay, we have to search for it. Parental rights. Here it is. Found it. Found it. Okay, everyone paying attention? This is Sophie Lewis in another talk that she gave in February 13th, 2024. Listen.
Yes, it's true. What the far right says, feminism wants to abolish the family. To hell with family values, and all capitalist value for that matter. And fuck parents' rights. My hunch is that just beyond the horizon, beckoning to those of us who want to hear it, there is a world of relationship no longer strangled by scarcity, and no longer held hostage by economics. Thank you.
You guys get it? That's what they think about parental rights. That right there. Fuck parental rights because it's a form of private property. Back to this.
Case, which I'm going to try. So there's two cases. If I remember correctly, they were in like either, I think they were 94 or 95. I'm sure someone's going to listen to this and correct me because I'm sure that's probably wrong. But so when you learn criminal law, one of the first cases that you learn is this case called the Crown and Brown because it is fucking juicy. So it's basically these guys came together and their whole thing was sort of like knocking their dicks to bits of wood, like with nails. And that was their thing and like crack on. And they were filming it and someone got hold of this video and then they got prosecuted for GBH, and it was a case where you're talking about whether or not you're allowed to consent to a certain level of harm, and they were all like, no, we really loved it, Your Honor, like this was our thing. And he was like, no, and so he sent a load of them down for grievous bodily harm. Now the year after, there was a case called the Crown and Wilson, if I'm remembering this correctly, where this woman was in a swimming changing room and her friend noticed these cuts on her butt, and she was like, "What's that?" And it's like, "Oh yeah, Mr. Wilson just like carved his initials into my ass as like a sex thing." And the friend, you imagine this conversation like a swimming pool, changing room, being like, "Cool, cool, 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 cool." Sally, it's 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, love. And then obviously this went to court on the same principle, and the judge in that said, "Well, it's not for the courts to say what should go on
Because Mr. Wilson did it.
because it's behind the closed doors of a family thing." And I think that really like illustrates the way in which this kind of, what you're talking about here, the way in which the family and the notion of like what the state, the way that the state allows violence to occur or is complicit in violence within that because of the sanctity of this family.
Yeah.
And I guess that's where some of the difficulty comes with like pulling this sort of amorphous web of the word family apart between these like queer families of lads knocking their dicks onto bits of wood. I mean, run free, not for me, if I'm honest. But
oh yeah,
cool, whatever. And this going on in a family home, and in order to pull those apart, in order to start looking at it, it requires, I think you were talking about it a little while ago, imagination, right? And for me, abolition and the difficulty we all have as abolitionists has always been this invitation to imagine. And you kind of talk about it a bit at the end, and sort of like not like giving a prescriptive, not doing a Charlie for you, nailed it, and being prescriptive on it, and then inviting people to imagine. I just wondered if you could kind of talk a little bit about how difficult that is within the society that we live in.
Yeah. Well, actually, the people who come to mind when you ask me about this problem are Michelle Barrett and Mary McIntosh, these two British Marxist feminists who were living under Thatcher and keeping the little torch of
Tim Pool, breaking news, 2 hours ago. Tim Pool tweeted a Nick Fuentes clip and said, "Nick Fuentes, voice of reason." So when is Nick going on your show, Timmy Tim? Like, how fucking stupid is Tim Pool feeling? All the times he shit on Nick Fuentes, all the fucking excuses that Tim Pool made about why he couldn't have Nick Fuentes on his show, and now Tim has finally fucking caved, and he's tweeting clips of Nick saying Nick Fuentes is the voice of reason. How fucking stupid is Tim feeling right now? Nick won. That's crazy. That's crazy.
Abolishing the family visions alive. I've got a torch about the size of a matchstick. I think that's the size of their torch in the 80s, the grim darkness of the 80s, where I do think, in a weird way, the left could maybe do with thinking a bit more. There are ways in which the 60s are talked about too much, and there are ways in which I think there's still not enough grieving that has been done of the defeat, if that makes sense. I've kind of been thinking about grief and how we think about the experience of being repeatedly defeated, and the psychological gymnastics we do. I guess going back to that thing of sort of failure happened, so it was silly to try. And it's a very natural cope, almost inevitable in a certain way, like maybe, or melancholic, right? We talk a lot about left melancholia, but but I wonder if that's partly because of an ungrieved character. Like the left had a moment of huge possibility in the long 60s, and then it got stomped into the dust. And one of the things in this context that matters to me is the fact that the most conservative, reactionary strands of women's liberation were the ones left standing in the rubble. And they wrote the history of what women's liberation was, and everybody hated them at the time. This is Alice Eccles's point in her history of women's liberation, daring to be bad, and I just need to hammer it home in every context, because those people are the trans exclusionary radical feminist
brand that has taken over this island that I don't live on.
Sophie is talking about feminists that Sophie doesn't consider to be feminists. Again, Sophie wrote an entire book called Enemy Feminisms, and she was very nice to sign a copy to me, although she didn't know she was signing it to me at the time because I'm not the one that got it, but someone else got it for me, which I really appreciate. But my bigger point is that Sophie wrote an entire book about all the different types of feminists that are not real feminists, because in order to be a feminist, according to Sophie, you have to be an anti-capitalist. And if you're not an anti-capitalist, or if you're a trans exclusionary radical feminist, or if you're any other type of feminist, you are an enemy feminist. And that's why the book is called Enemy Feminisms. It's about all of the different types of enemy feminisms. Yeah, Sophie pretends not to like me, but she does. She secretly likes me. It's fine. We know, Sophie. We know. It's fine.
On and didn't grow up in, and have a sort of maybe like a slightly outside perspective on, despite sounding like I'm from here. There's this kind of way in which as cultural feminists, Alice Eccles calls them, who were quite anti-utopian at the time, unlike many of their sisters. And they as I say, sort of won. And so they got to say, yeah, women's lib never was about abolishing the family. This is a lie. They got to say, you know, women's lib was never about, you know, fighting alongside trans women. This is a lie, right? Trans women were there in the long 60s. Anyway, bit of a sidebar, but what I'm trying to get at is, like, there is something about anti-utopianism that is structural and that we need to keep pointing to in order to start to be able to fight it. And in the 80s, to go back to Michelle Barrett and Mary McIntosh and their tiny little torch.
The tiny torch. I'll hold it with you.
So everything has been lost. Nobody is dreaming big anymore on the left. Another sidebar, really quick. Ellen Willis has an essay at the end of the 70s where she says in the Village Voice, what happened, comrades? You know, 10 years ago, you were saying abolish the family. You were, I have the receipts. And now you're saying we never meant that. We never said that. You know, why? You know, we were not wrong to try.
Did she print the receipts? I love for that drama. I love for it so much. It's so easy to do now because everyone tweets shit.
Yeah.
But back then,
that's true. It was hard.
Tricky.
Yeah, it was tricky. And she, you know, she's sort of holding people a little bit to account and noticing. It's almost like this moment in time where you can see the erasure and the forgetting being manufactured, which is why today, actually surprisingly few people have heard of this phrase abolish the family, which was, you know, I'm not going to pretend that it was like mainstream in you know, in 1969 or 1972, but it was something people had heard of, and it was relatively accepted in women's liberation as a really central part of feminism. And then people started pretending that it wasn't. And you have Gloria Steinem saying feminism has never been critical of the family. No.
Girl, what?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you're just lying. You're just lying. Why are you lying?
This is humiliating for you.
Let's think about why we're lying. There are reasons. Anyway, but Michelle Barrett and Mary McIntosh refused to collude in that lie. And so while Thatcher was saying there is no such thing as society, there are individual men and women and there are families, they are saying, yep. And the reason for that is the family. Like, the reason why there is no society is the family. It's this really elegant point. The book is called The Antisocial Family. And so they're kind of turning the Thatcherite assumption on its head and saying, what if the family is almost stealing our sociality from us? And because of our assumption that, I think they have a phrase like, I'm going to get it wrong, but it's like love, like mother love and good things to eat is to be found in this one place. That's keeping us from meeting each other in the public sphere. And so people always asked them, they said, what would you put in place of the family? And they have this response, which I find very striking, which is, we would put nothing in the place of the family. Like, the answer is nothing, because we will find out what the social is when we stop running indoors to get our needs met in this private realm that is
So I wanted to pause there because people have asked, okay, Karlyn, they want to abolish the family. What do they want to replace it with? Sophie is telling you, we're not replacing it with anything. They're saying we need to abolish the family because we need to get rid of this privatized, oppressive, capitalist model. But we're not saying we're going to replace it with anything. We are changing the form of human relations, and the new structure will emerge once we abolish the family. So listen again.
And that's keeping us from meeting each other in the public sphere. And so people always asked them, they said, what would you put in place of the family? And they have this response, which I find very striking, which is, we would put nothing in the place of the family. Like, the answer is nothing, because we will find out what the social is when we stop running indoors to get our needs met in this private realm that is starved on purpose by capitalism, because it's ultimately functioning to give free labor to capitalism. And so you can't do one without the other. You can't overthrow capitalism, I think, without changing the family. And you also definitely can't change the family without overthrowing capitalism. That's the bad news. This book probably should say, you know,
cover the warning.
Deprivatize the private nuclear household. Doesn't have a good ring to it, or like positively supersede the private nuclear household.
Quite as sexy.
Or like, you know, overthrow capitalism, which has sort of been done a little bit. The bad news is, yeah, you can't. I do not want to separate out what a family abolitionist politics would look like from the struggle against capitalism, basically. And I think if you did try to abolish the family without abolishing capitalism, you would create a nightmare worse than what we have. I just want to be really clear about that. Like, it's worse. You would create a nightmare.
To bring us to a heady conclusion.
Hang on. That's basically the end. We don't have much more time because I gotta go. I'm doing a Twitter space at 9 p.m. so I gotta wrap this up. Are they planning on this happening naturally or by force? I mean, they're planning on overthrowing the government, so I would say that's going to involve some force. They can't, guys, every time they're talking about abolishing capitalism, they're talking about overthrowing the government. You cannot abolish capitalism in the United States without overthrowing the government, because the government, they believe, is grounded in capitalism. The Constitution is a capitalist document, so it's going to require force. But they also do believe that once they overthrow capitalism and they start to implement their Marxist utopia, the family as a model will naturally die off because capitalism will no longer be reproduced, or something like that. It's something like that. Filthy Angry Irish Peasant, thank you for the super chat. I saw it. I've never been on Timcast. This is like one of those like Mandela effect things. Everyone thinks I have been on Tim Pool's show. I have never been on Tim Pool's show, and I never will be on Tim Pool's show because Tim Pool is a low IQ retard that I don't care to waste my time on. But I promise you have not seen me on Timcast. I've literally never been on the show, but that's okay. I do appreciate the super chat anyway. Such irony, Tim will never talk about Israel dominating the tech sector and critical infrastructure. Nick is unavoidable. Tim knows. Well, Tim is starting to figure it out. You know, maybe Tim isn't as dumb as I think he is. Tim is starting to figure it out. I'll tell you this. Tim Pool doesn't have a clue about the left, though. He has no clue. Tim thinks he understands the left. He has no idea. Every time I watch Tim Pool's content, I end up yelling at the monitor for like an hour, and I lose my voice because I yell so much because Tim has such fucking hubris. He thinks he understands the left, and he wouldn't. No, I have been invited. I'm telling you, I do not want to go on that show. There's no reason for me to go on that show because I can't show any of my evidence. I would just get into an argument with Tim. Tim would probably end up crying if I got into an argument with him. It's not that I haven't been invited. I have been. I just don't want to go. So no. No, 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 no. No. There's no reason. It's like the only thing people would be talking about would be my weight and my looks. I wouldn't get to show any of my clips. I wouldn't actually get to talk about anything that I care about. So no. I'm sticking out here. I'm doing my underground thing. People who are meant to find my content will find my content. I really do believe that. Anyway, guys, we do have to wrap it up because I'm doing a Twitter space in about 15 minutes. I do hope you guys will be able to join me. If you want to follow me on Twitter, head over to my page, which is at Dr. Karlyn B. Pull it up here. That is my Twitter page. Make sure you follow me over there. I will be doing a space with Sally in 15 minutes where we're going to talk about how Trantifa isn't a real thing. We're going to talk about other stuff too. And of course, guys, please make sure you are signed up for my Substack. That is Karlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. And this is where I post all my best content and all my best clips and all my best stuff and things like that. And you can support the work I'm doing over there. My preferred method of support is on Substack for $8 a month, $80 a year. You guys allow me to do what I do. Please sign up on the Substack. You get access to spy streams. You get access to special supporter only perks like my supporter Discord, stuff like that. And you fund the work I'm doing and you keep me completely independent because I don't have to show political talking points. I just show up. I show you guys the receipts. I tell you the truth. That's it. Would love to have you talk to my local party. Hey, I'll do talks. I will absolutely do talks. If you want me to do talks, here's what you need to do. If you want me to do talks, go to decodetheleft.com. This is my main website. And you want to go here. You want to go to services. And then you want to go to book Karlyn to speak. And you will be able to, if my website is loading on a good day. I don't know why that image isn't loading. Why isn't that image loading? What the fuck? There it is. See, still there. Just had to reload. Just got to turn it off, turn it back on. Anyway, go to decodetheleft.com/speaking. You'll be able to find out how to get in touch with me. You'll be able to find out some of the talks I do. I'm willing to come and like do virtual talks with you guys or come in person, whichever. But just reach out to me through the website and we can talk about that. I definitely want to do more speaking out with different groups. So you can get in touch on the website and find me there. Anyway, that's it. I gotta go get ready for this space. I need to like pee first and do stuff like that. Thank you guys for joining me. I will be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern time where we will do it all over again. I appreciate you guys. Mount the like button on the way out the door. Please make sure you subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And I'll see you guys on the flip side. Take care, guys. Have a good one. We'll see you soon. Bye.
How are you feeling? How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
And what brought you?
That's difficult to answer. is influenced my thinking and consequently my action.
What is it you're trying to do with your life?
Play the piano for the people.
I'm not clear. How is it that playing the piano for people has eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital?
That's difficult to answer.